بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فإن أحسن الكلام كلام الله وخير الهدى هدى محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وإن شر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. So my lecture today and tomorrow is titled The Effects of Tawheed on Removing Calamities and Defeating Enemies. And this lecture is obviously within the theme of the conference, which is based upon the ayah in the Quran, ظهر الفساد في البر والبحر بما كسبت أيدي الناس. Mischief has appeared upon the land and the sea on account of what the hands of men have earned. ليذيقهم بعد الذي عملوا لعلهم يرجعون. So that he may give them a taste of that which they have done, in order that they may return back to the truth. And we know in the Quran that the asl, the foundation of all calamities, of all hardships, return back to the deeds of men. For example, the statement of Allah Azza wa Jal, وَمَا أَصَابَكُم مِّن مُّصِيبَةٍ فَبِمَا كَسَبَتْ أَيْدِيكُمْ وَيَعْفُو عَنْ كَثِيرٍ. That no calamity befalls you except that it is on account of what your own hands have earned. Yet he pardons many. And so we find that the scholars of the Muslims, the Mufassirun, and the scholars throughout the ages, and from them Ibn Taymiyyah and Ibn al-Qayyim, have commented upon these verses and explained how the basis of every calamity, every hardship, every tribulation, every trial, every difficulty, all of it returns back to sins and disobedience, to the deeds of men. And Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah has summarized the entire matter in a short, simple statement when he was commenting upon the ayah in which Allah Azza wa Jal, after Adam alayhi salam, he disobeyed his Lord and he ordered them to descend from paradise, and he stated that some of you will be enemies to others. بَعْدُكُمْ لِبَعْدٍ عَدُوٌّ. Some of you will be enemies to others, meaning that there will be enmity. There will be enmity upon the earth. So commenting upon this ayah, Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, he says, فَكُلُّ عَدَاوَةٍ كَانَتْ فِي ذُرِّيَّتِهِمَا وَبَلَاءٍ وَمَكْرُوهٍ. So every enmity which arises amongst the offspring of Adam, and Iblis, who is the father of the jinn, or Adam and his spouse. So every enmity which arises, and every bala, every tribulation, wa makruh, and every dislikable thing, takunu ila qiyam as-sa'a, which will happen from that time till the establishment of the hour, wa fi an-nar yawm al-qiyamah, and even in the hellfire on the day of judgment, which means that there will be enmity even amongst the inhabitants of the hellfire. So that enmity and that tribulation and those dislikable things, all the way to the establishment of the hour, and among the people of the hellfire on the day of judgment, sababuha, its cause is al-dhunub wa ma'siyatul Rabbi ta'ala, is sins and the disobedience of the Lord, the Exalted. So this we know, and it's very clear that sins and disobedience are the cause of fasad and fitna, tribulation, corruption. And fitna, the tribulation here that we are speaking of, then it is the calamities, the masa'ib, and it is the subduing by the enemies, it is the humiliation, it is so many of these things. And the asl of all of that returns back down to the heart. And what is in the heart of certain evils and of the weakness of the heart, we find very, very clearly in certain ahadith, the Messenger of Allah explaining, Sallallahu alaykum dhulla, for example, that Allah will inflict upon you a humiliation, meaning that when you do certain deeds, certain things which are prohibited, and you incline towards the earth, you engage in unlawful transactions, you content yourself with agriculture, so basically you become preoccupied with the dunya. The asl of that goes back to the heart, to what's in the heart. And likewise, the fact that the nations, when the nations see the weakness in the hearts of the Muslims, then they will invite each other, just like they invite each other to eat food from a plate. So we see in the hadith of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu يوشك أن تداعى عليكم الأمم كما من كل أفق, in one narration, من كل أفق كما تداعى العقلة على قصعتها, that the nations are about to come upon you, that mutually invite each other to come upon you from every horizon, from every direction, from every horizon. Just like a group of people who are going to eat from a plate, just like they invite each other to come and to eat from that plate. And so the companions, they said, فَمِنْ قِلَّةٍ يَوْمَئِذٍ, is it because we are going to be few in number or small in number on that day? And the Messenger of Allah, he said, no, you will be like the ghutha, you will be like the froth, that is the froth of the ocean, like the white, scummy, frothy thing that you see on the ocean. That's how you will be. And there will be wahn in your hearts, wahn, weakness in your hearts. And the ru'ub, which is the awe and the fear which is in the hearts of your enemies, will be removed. And the wahn is the love of life and the fear of death. So as you can see clearly, just from these small samples of statements, the asal of everything, of tribulations, of calamities, it returns back to what is in the heart. So my lecture today really in two parts. Today we are going to look at Tawheed and the heart, and the weakness of Tawheed in the heart being the reason for trials and tribulations and calamities and hardships. And what are those things in the heart which cause these tribulations, first of all. And secondly, in tomorrow's lecture, we will look at how the prophets and messengers, the companions, the righteous people, how they were aided by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in times of severe distress, severe difficulty, severe hardship, when facing enemies, when facing persecution, oppression, and how they were aided by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on account of the strength of Tawheed, which was in their hearts, manifested in their outward, their outward actions and their behaviors. So this is the general outline of my talk, inshallah, today and tomorrow. So today, like I said, we are looking at Tawheed in the heart and its weakness. What's the asl, what's the basis of all of these tribulations? So we start with the statement of Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah, who says, اعلم أن بين الفتنة والتوحيد منافات. So he said, you should know that between al-fitna and Tawheed, there is munafat, meaning that there is between tribulation and Tawheed, there is a clash. There's a clash. They are mutually exclusive. They exclude each other. Al-fitna and Tawheed. كما قال تعالى, what is the evidence? The evidence is, he says, as Allah the Exalted said, وَقَاتِلُوهُمْ حَتَّى لَا تَكُونَ فِتْنَةٌ وَيَكُونَ الدِّينُ كُلُّهُ لِلَّهِ. This is his proof. He said, fight against them, fight back against them, until there is no more tribulation, there is no more fitna, and the whole of the religion is for Allah. Then he says, فَنَاقِدٌ بَيْنَ كَوْنِ الْفِتْنَةِ وَبَيْنَ كَوْنِ الدِّينِ كُلِّهِ لِلَّهِ فَكُلٌّ مِّنْهُمَا يُنَاقِدُ الْآخَرِ. He says, so therefore there is a clash between there being tribulation, between there being fitna, and between there being the religion being all for Allah. So both of them, they invalidate or they clash with the other. Explaining this further, Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, he said, فَلَا تَزُولُ الْفِتْنَةَ عَنِ الْقَلْبِ إِلَّا إِذَا كَانَ دِينُ الْعَبْدِ كُلَّهُ لِلَّهِ عَزَّ وَجَلَّ. Tribulation will not cease in the heart. Tribulation, a person will never stop being put to trial in his heart, except when the religion of that servant, all of it is for Allah. When he makes all of his deen for Allah, which obviously is Tawheed. And then he says, فَيَكُونُ حُبُّهُ لِلَّهِ وَلِمَا يُحِبُّهُ اللَّهِ وَبُغْضُهُ لِلَّهِ وَلِمَا يُبْغِضُهُ اللَّهِ وَكَذَلِكَ مَوَالَاتُهُ وَمَعَادَاتُهُ. Hence, his love is for Allah and for whatever Allah loves. And his hatred is for the sake of Allah and for whatever Allah hates. And likewise is his loyalty and his disloyalty. So from these two statements, what we understand now is that trials, tribulations, and calamities on the one hand, they stand against and contradict and are mutually exclusive to Tawheed on the other hand. When a servant makes all of his religion for Allah, meaning there's ikhlas, there's Tawheed, there is ta'ah, there is obedience, and so on and so forth, then that will invalidate tribulation in his religion and his world. And conversely, when there is weakness in his Tawheed, then this will draw and bring and invite, he will draw tribulation to himself. And as Ibn Taymiyyah mentioned, this fitna will not cease plaguing the heart of a servant until his deen, all of it, is for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So from this we immediately understand that the asl of everything, when the people of Tawheed and Sunnah following the prophets and messengers, when they want to put an end to trials, to calamities, to tribulations in themselves, in their families, in their societies, in their nation, or in the whole ummah, it's all the same, then the asl of all of that has to return back to the heart. And for that reason, the people of Tawheed and the Sunnah, following the prophets and messengers, they know exactly where the disease is, they know exactly where the cure lies, and so therefore when they interpret the calamities and the tribulations that befall them as an individual or the ummah as a whole, because that is simply an extension of the individual, it's no different, then they know exactly where the disease and the cure lies. And that is why they never change. Right? They never change in the way that they are upon. That's why the people of Tawheed and the Sunnah, they always remain firm in every trial, in every tribulation, in every calamity, just like the prophets and messengers, as we shall see tomorrow, inshaAllah ta'ala. They remain firm. And this is why Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, he said, speaking about Ahlul Sunnah, وَأَمَّا أَهْلُ السُّنَّةِ وَالْحَدِيثِ فَمَا يُعْلَمُ أَحَدٌ مِّنْ عُلَمَائِهِمْ وَلَا صَالِحِ عَامَتِهِمْ رَجَعَ قَطٌّ عَنْ قَوْلِهِ وَاعْتِقَادِهِ. Right? It is not known from the people of the Sunnah and Hadith. As for the people of the Sunnah and Hadith, it is not known about any one of their scholars, nor about any one of their righteous common people, even the righteous common people from the people of Tawheed and Sunnah. It is not known from any of them that they turned back from their speech or from their belief. So they do not hold one thing and then turn back on it the next day or the next week, or in one fitna hold one thing and then turn back from it in another. You don't see this from the people of Tawheed and the Sunnah. You see consistency. And he says, بَلْ هُمْ أَعْظَمُ النَّاسِ صَبْرًا عَلَى ذَلِكَ. They are the most patient of people upon that. وَإِنْ أُمْتُحِنُوا بِأَنْوَاءِ الْمِحَنِ وَفُتِنُوا بِأَنْوَاءِ الْفِتَنِ. Even if they are put to trial, examined, put to trial by various types of tribulations and various types of trials, وهذه حال الأنبياء وأتباعهم وحال الأنبياء وأتباعهم من المتقدمين كأهل الأخدود ونحوهم وكسلف هذه الأمة من الصحابة والتابعين وغيرهم من الأئمة. And this is the way or the condition of the prophets and their followers from the foremost ones from before, even before Islam, like the people of al-Ukhdud, the people who were put in a pit and they were they were thrown into a pit because they didn't renounce their religion. And whoever is like them, and likewise from the Salaf of this Ummah, from the Sahaba and the Tabi'een, and other than them from the A'imma. So this is the way of the people of Tawheed and the Sunnah, that because by virtue of this guidance, because they know the causes of calamities and hardships, and they have that knowledge from the Quran, from the Sunnah, from understanding the call of the prophets, and from the scholars of the Muslims who made tahqiq of this way, like Ibn Taymiyyah, Ibn al-Qayyim, and the scholars today who are upon this way and who write about this and who clarify and explain this, then they are the most firm in the face of trials and tribulations, no matter what that trial or tribulation might be, whether it is splitting, sectarianism, whether it is domination of an enemy, whether it is worldly trials like poverty, and no matter what it might be, then the people of Tawheed and the Sunnah, they are the strongest, and they never change their methodology, they never change their way, they never change their approach, because the truth is with them. So once we have that basic introduction, so what we've established so far is that Tawheed and tribulations, the religion being for Allah, whether at the level of the servant or the whole ummah, this clashes with and opposes tribulations and calamities. And the asal, the foundation of all of that, comes back down to what is in the heart. Because the heart is the seat of knowledge, it is the seat of irada, it is ilm, and irada comes from the heart. And any corruption externally can only ever arise from corruption internally. And so therefore the asl we have to always go back to is to what is in the heart. So what we are going to do, insha'Allah ta'ala, in the rest of this lesson, is look at some speech from Ibn al-Qayyim, Ibn Taymiyyah, looking in detail into how do tribulations enter into the heart of a servant, and what are those tribulations? And what is the detail in that respect? So the first statement from Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah in his book al-Fawa'id, so he says, Arkanul Kufr arba'a. The pillars of disbelief are the pillars of ingratitude, because this applies both to a Muslim and a non-Muslim. Arkanul Kufr arba'a. Al-Kibr, wal-Hasad, wal-Ghadab, wal-Shahwa. Right, so these are the 4 pillars of disbelief. Al-Kibr, which is arrogance. Al-Hasad, which is envy or jealousy. Al-Ghadab, which is anger. And Al-Shahwa, which is lust. Meaning that all of the people of disbelief, they are people of disbelief because they rejected Iman on account of these 4 things. It is either Kibr, arrogance in accepting the truth, or it is al-hasad, envious that someone else has the truth. So you reject it because of envy. Al-ghadab, anger, or ash-shahwa, lust, because you prefer the portion of the world rather than Iman, because you don't want to lose that pleasure and whatever it might be. Although these are the pillars of kufr, they also apply to a Muslim, because a Muslim, his heart is put to trial and is drawn towards kufr by way of these 4 things, which is why they are the roots of kufr. So they are al-kibr, al-hasad, al-ghadab, wa shahwa. So he says, فَالْكِبْرْ يَمْنَعُهُ الْإِنْقِيَادِ. Arrogance is prevented with compliance. So you comply with the truth, and you comply with the command of Allah and His Messenger. You show compliance. And so al-kibr is prevented through inqiyad. وَالْحَسَدْ يَمْنَعُهُ قُبُولُ النَّصِيحَةِ وَبَذْلُهَا. And envy is prevented by accepting advice. You accept nasiha and you surrender to it and you accept it. So al-hasad, envy, is prevented by that. وَالْغَضَبْ يَمْنَعُهُ الْعَدَلِ. Anger is prevented by justice. So even though you feel anger, there is anger, no doubt, because of situations you are put in the worldly affairs, it is prevented by al-adal, because Allah has commanded al-adal. So al-adal, justice, prevents you from exercising your anger in a way which makes you exceed the limits and fall into injustice. So it is countered and prevented by al-adal. وَالشَّهْوَةِ, which is lust and desires, تَمْنَعُهُ التَّفَرُّغ لِلْعِبَادَةِ. التَّفَرُّغ لِلْعِبَادَةِ, which is you dedicate yourself and you preoccupy yourself with worship. So if you make a habit to be engaged in worship, you will not be sitting idly, you will not be wasting your time to be put to trial by way of lusts and desires. So he says, فَإِذَا أُنْحُدِمَ رُكْنُ الْكِبْرِ سَهُلَ عَلَيْهِ الْإِنْقِيَادِ. So when the pillar of al-kibr is demolished or is absent, then inqiyad will become easy for him. To comply will become easy from him. وَإِذَا أُنْحُدِمَ رُكْنُ الْحَسَدِ. And when the pillar of envy and jealousy is ended or destroyed, then accepting advice and surrendering to it will become easy for him. وَإِذَا أُنْحُدِمَ رُكْنُ الْغَضَبِ سَهُلَ عَلَيْهِ الْعَدَلُ وَالتَّوَاضُعُ. And when the pillar of anger is ended or destroyed, then to be just and to be humble and just will become easy for him. وَإِذَا أُنْحُدِمَ رُكْنُ الشَّهْوَةِ سَهُلَ عَلَيْهِ الصَّبْرُ وَالْعَفَافُ وَالْعِبَادَةُ. And when the pillar of desire and lust is ended or destroyed, then patience, chastity and worship will become easy for him. Then he says, وَزَوَالُ الْجِبَالِ عَنْ أَمَاكِنِهَا أَيْسَرُ مِنْ زَوَالِ هَذِهِ الْأَرْبَعَةِ أَمَّنْ بُلِيَ بِهَا وَلَا سِيَّمَا إِذَا صَارَتْ هِيئَاتٍ رَاسِخَةٍ وَمَلَكَاتٍ وَصِفَاتٍ ثَابِتَةٍ. He says, indeed, to put an end to mountains, to move mountains from their places, to shift a mountain from its place to somewhere else, and to put an end to it, is easier than to end these 4 traits, al-kibr, al-hasad, al-ghadab, al-shahwa, to remove these 4 traits from the one who is put to trial by them, especially when they take form as like a structure or as a trait and as firmly established attributes. So when these qualities, al-kibr, al-hasad, al-ghadab, al-shahwa, when they take root and take firm hold in a person, it is easier to move an entire mountain from its place than it is to move these things out of the heart of a person. And that's why we have the sealing of the heart. When a person's heart becomes sealed upon his kufr, or upon his nifaq, or upon his dalal, or upon whichever path he's chosen, there comes a point when these qualities, which are the arkan of kufr, of misguidance, they become so firmly entrenched and settled that it is impossible therefrom, from that point to remove them. Then he says, فَلَا يَسْتَقِيمُ لَهُ مَعَهَا عَمَلٌ الْبَتَّةٌ. So alongside these roots, when they take hold, it is not possible for a person to do any action at all. وَلَا تَزْكُو نَفْسُهُ مَعَ قِيَامِهَا بِهَا. His soul can never be purified by way of them. And every time he tries to do an action, these 4, they corrupt his action. And all other trials, they are born from these 4 things. And when they settle in the heart, then they will cause him to see arathul batil fi suratil haq. He will see batil as if it is in the form of truth. And he will see truth in the form and appearance of falsehood. And he will see the ma'ruf, what is good, in the form of what is evil. And he will see the munkar in the form of what is good. And when all of these affairs have been turned around, so the scales have now been turned around the other way around, then the dunya will then be drawn towards him. Why? Because now he's been blinded. He's been blinded. So the dunya comes towards him, and the hereafter becomes further and further away from him. And then he says, وَإِذَا تَأَمَّلْتَ كُفْرَ الْأُمَمِ رَأَيْتَهُ نَاشِئًا مِنْهَا. When you see the disbelief of all of the nations of the past and the present, when you look at what their disbelief and the nature of their disbelief, and when you read the stories of the prophets and you reflect upon the nations, past and present, you see their kufr emanates from these 4. It is either arrogance, or it is envy, or it is anger, or it is shahwa. And he says, وَعَلَيْهَا يَقَعُ الْعَذَابِ. And it is upon these that punishment befalls. And he says, and then he continues and he says, فَمَنْ فَتَحَهَا عَلَى نَفْسِهِ فَتَحَ عَلَيْهِ أَبْوَابَ الشُّرُورِ. So whoever opens the door to these things, he opens the door to all of the evils in this life and the next life. And whoever closes that door to these evils, then to these 4, then he closes the door to all evils, and they are prevented by al-inqiyad. فَإِنَّهَا تَمْنَعُ الْإِنقِيَادِ وَالْإِخْلَاصِ وَالتَّوْبَةِ وَالْإِنَابَةِ وَقُبُولَ الْحَقِّ وَنَصِيحَةُ الْمُسْلِمِينَ وَتَوَاضُعُ لِلَّهِ وَلِخَلْقِهِ. Right? So these 4, what do they prevent? They prevent all of these things. They prevent ikhlas, they prevent inqiyad, they prevent repentance, they prevent remorse to Allah, they prevent acceptance of the truth, they prevent being sincere to the Muslims and giving advice to the Muslims, and they prevent humility to Allah and humility to the creation. All of these evils are born from these 4. So this is the first statement. What do we have? We have al-kibr, al-hasad, al-ghadab, al-shahwa. All of these emanate in the heart, and they lead to corruption and evil, whether that be among the people of disbelief who are established upon these things, or the Muslims who are put to trial by way of these things. The second statement, also from Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah, this also relates to the weakness of Tawheed. So this first statement indicates clearly the weakness of Tawheed in the heart, where these things compete, al-kibr, al-hasad, al-ghadab, al-shahwa. Likewise, he says, أصول المعاصي كلها كبارها وصغارها ثلاثة. The foundations of all disobedience, all of them, lie in three. تعلق القلب بغير الله وطاعة القوة الغضبية والقوة الشهوانية. So he says that the foundations of disobedience, all of them, the large and the small, they lie in three things. Firstly, the heart's attachment to other than Allah. To other than Allah. And we know that this is incorporates many things, starting with ar-riya and loving wealth and attachment to material things, which then compete in the heart for attachment to Allah, and then all the way to actual shirk, which is invoking other than Allah and worshipping other than Allah. So this ta'alluq is of various levels, and it's the foundation of disobedience. That's the first one. The second one, obeying the impulse of anger. The impulse of anger, obeying it and effecting it, meaning acting upon it and effecting it. And thirdly, obeying the strength or this faculty or this impulse of desire and lust. So what are they? In short, ash-shirk, al-dhulm, and al-fawahish. Ash-shirk, wal-dhulm, wal-fawahish. These three, attachment to other than Allah is shirk. Enacting anger, the impulse of anger, makes you fall into oppression. It is dhulm. And obeying the lusts and desires, it is al-fawahish. It is shameful deeds. Shameful deeds. Ash-shirk, wal-dhulm, wal-fawahish. And these three, what they lead to, the end result of each of these three is either it leads you to worship other than Allah, so that's the extreme end of being attached to other than Allah. It is to invoke other than Allah. Or it is to kill a person. It is to kill a person, al-qatl. So the extreme end result of anger is to actually kill somebody. So it's murder, it's killing. And the extreme end result and outcome of the shahwa is to fall into zina. Right? So these are the end inevitable outcomes, even though there are precursors to all of these things. And these three foundations have been mentioned in the Quran, in an ayah, in Surah Al-Furqan, towards the end of the surah, in which Allah Azza wa Jal, He says, وَالَّذِينَ لَا يَدْعُونَ مَعَ اللَّهِ إِلَهًا آخَرَ وَلَا يَقْتُلُونَ النَّفْسَ الَّتِي حَرَّمَ اللَّهُ إِلَّا بِالْحَقِّ وَلَا يَزْنُونَ. So in this ayah, Allah Azza wa Jal, He says, those who do not invoke another deity alongside Allah, so negating shirk, and who do not kill a soul without a due right, this is murder, and who do not commit zina, right? So we see these three foundations are mentioned in this verse. Then he says, فَهَذِهِ الثَّلَاثَ يَجُرُّ بَعْدُهَا إِلَى بَعْدٍ. These three, some of them draw others to each other, meaning they are connected. Right? So when there is attachment to other than Allah, it will make you become angry and exceed that anger and make you fall into oppression. And similarly, that attachment to other than Allah, that will lead you to fall into shahwa and eventually fall into what is prohibited. And likewise, zina, when you fall into zina, it can lead you into attachment to other than Allah and lead you into shirk. And similarly, anger can lead you into these affairs. So they're all connected. فَهَذِهِ الثَّلَاثَ يَجُرُّ بَعْدُهَا إِلَى بَعْدٍ وَيَأْمُرُ بَعْدُهَا بِبَعْدٍ. And some of them invite and command to others. وَلِهَذَا كُلَّمَا كَانَ الْقَلْبُ أَضْعَفُ تَوْحِيدًا وَأَعْظَمُ شِرْكًا كَانَ أَكْثَرَ فَاحِشَةً وَأَعْظَمَ تَعَلُّقًا بِالصُّوَرِ عِشْقًا وَعِشْقًا لَهَا. So this is why every time the heart is weaker in its Tawheed and greater in its shirk, then that heart will be greater in its fahisha, in its, in its falling into shameful deeds, and greater in attachment to forms and appearances, and out of infatuation with them. Ibn al-Qayyim goes on to mention another ayah in which all of these three foundations have been mentioned. So we see it mentioned in another ayah. And this is the verse in which Allah Azza wa Jalla, or the passage in which Allah Azza wa Jalla, He says, فَمَا أُوتِيتُم مِّن شَيْءٍ فَمَتَاءُ الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا وَمَا عِندَ اللَّهِ خَيْرٌ وَأَبْقَى لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَلَى رَبِّهِمْ يَتَوَكَّلُونَ وَالَّذِينَ يَجْتَنِبُونَ كَبَائِرَ الْإِثْمِ وَالْفَوَاحِشِ وَإِذَا مَا غَضِبُوا هُمْ يَغْفِرُونَ. So here Allah says, whatever they have been given is from the pleasure, simply the pleasure of the life of this world. But what is with Allah is better and more lasting for those who believe and place reliance upon their Lord, and those who avoid the major sins and the shameful deeds, and those who, when they become angry, they forgive. So here all three things have been mentioned again. So he said that those who believe and have tawakkul upon Allah, then what is with Allah is better for them. This is Tawheed. Then he said, those who avoid the major sins and shameful deeds, this is avoidance of shahwa. And the third thing, when they become angry, وَإِذَا مَا غَضِبُوا هُمْ يَغْفِرُونَ. When they become angry, then they overlook and they forgive. So they oppose the anger and enacting that anger. So Ibn al-Qayyim says, after all of this, فَجَمَعَ بَيْنَ التَّوْحِيدِ وَالْعِفَّةِ وَالْعَدَلِ التي هي جماع الخير كله. So he united between, he brought together at-Tawheed and chastity and purity and al-Adal, all of which are combined together and provide all of goodness. Okay? So far, what do we have so far? We see there is what draws tribulation to the heart and what causes the weakness of Tawheed that then leads to calamities and tribulations in your life and in your family's life and in the society's life and in the whole ummah. What is it? It is al-kibr, al-hasad, al-ghadab, al-shahwa, and likewise here al-shirk of its various levels and types. And obviously he mentioned, repeated again, al-ghadab and al-shahwa again. Then we have a statement from Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah. And another disease now here is al-hawa. Al-hawa, which opposes al-ikhlas to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Shaykh al-Islam to me, he said, وَإِذَا كَانَ الْعَبْدُ مُخْلِصًا لَهُ اجْتَبَاهُ رَبُّهُ فَيُحْيِي قَلْبَهُ وَاجْتَذَبَهُ إِلَيْهِ فَيَنْصَرِفُ عَنْهُ مَا يُضَادُ ذَلِكَ مِنَ السُّوءِ وَالْفَحْشَاءِ وَيَخَافُ مِنْ حُصُولُ ضِدَّ ذَلِكَ. So he says, when the servant is sincere to Allah. So ikhlas, when a person is sincere to Allah, it means he is not driven by hawa. Hawa, desire, is when you are motivated by something other than seeking the face of Allah. It is the world, it is a woman, it is power, it is authority, it is wealth, it is showing off, it is to be recognized. All of these are diseases which arise in the heart. This is hawa. But when the servant is mukhlis, when the servant is sincere to Allah, Allah will then give life to his heart. There will be life in his heart. And he will be drawn towards his Lord, and whatever contradicts that of evil, shameful deeds and things like that, then they will be, drawn away from him. بخلاف القلب الذي لم يخلص لله فإنه في طلب وإرادة وحب مطلق. This is different to the heart which is not sincere to Allah. So the heart which is not sincere to Allah, then you find this heart is in pursuit of something. Right? So if your heart is not sincere to Allah and is not seeking Allah, it has to by necessity be seeking something else, by necessity. Right? So a heart which is not like this, then this heart is in some pursuit. It has a desire and it has a love for something which is unrestricted. فَيَحْوَى مَا يَصْنَحُ لَهُ وَيَتَشَبَّثُ بِمَا يَحْوَاهُ. So basically, whatever comes to its mind, it clings to, it follows, and it is just like the branch or the twig of a tree. When the wind comes, it blows in this direction. When it comes in another way, it goes in that direction, meaning that it goes and bends and turns in whichever way the wind comes. Right? So if it is drawn sometimes to appearances, meaning pictures and appearances of what is unlawful, then it will become a captive and a slave to those things. And at other times, it is drawn by nobility and leadership. A person wants to be a leader. He wants to be seen. He wants to have authority. He wants to appear to be noble. So then he's drawn in that direction. And when he does that, then he becomes angry and pleased for other than the truth. If he gets his leadership, he'll praise the one who helped him in that. If he doesn't get his leadership, he'll be angry with the one who prevented him from that. Right? So his speech and his behavior is all governed by this hawa. And at other times, it is the dirham and the dinar. It is money, it is wealth. Some people are drawn by wealth. And these things, ya ikhwan, these things are real. And they happen. And they are true. They happen amongst us. They happen to the common person. They happen to the student of knowledge. They happen to the evil scholar. They happen to the ruler. No one is immune from all of these things. These things happen and they are true. If you are not sincere, then your heart will be in pursuit of something, whatever that might be. And then it will draw all of those diseases that we mentioned, al-kibr, al-hasad, al-baghi, al-shahwa, al-ta'alluq bighayri Allah, al-shirk, right? It becomes a magnet for those things. And then he says, وَمَنْ لَمْ يَكُنْ خَالِصًا لِلَّهِ عَبْدًا لَهُ قَدْ سَارَ قَلْبُهُ. The one who is not sincere to Allah and a slave to Allah, then his heart will become distance from Allah. And so whoever is sincere to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and who singles out his Lord without any partners, in that only Allah is the most beloved thing to him, and he is humble to Allah, and either he does this, either he does that. So either he's like this. If he doesn't do this, then the whole of the creation will actually enslave him. Meaning that you are either that person who is sincere to Allah and has no hawa and repels it from himself, and thereby he becomes truly a slave only to his Lord. It is either that, and if it's not that, then in the course of his life, the whole of the creation is basically, effectively conspiring against him to make him a slave to the creation. Right? وَإِلَّا إِسْتَعْبَدَتْهُ الْكَائِنَاتِ وَاسْتَوْلَتْ عَلَى قَلْبِهِ الشَّيَاطِينَ وَكَانَ مِنَ الْغَاوِينَ إِخْوَانِ الشَّيَاطِينَ وَصَارَ فِيهِ مِنَ السُّوءِ وَالْفَحْشَاءِ مَا لَا يَعْلَمُهُ إِلَّا اللَّهُ وَهَذَا أَمْرٌ ضَرُورِيٌّ لَا حِيلَةَ فِيهِ. Right? So, if not, then the whole of the creation will enslave him. The devils will gain mastery over him, and he will become from those who are misled and from the brethren of the shayateen, and there will be within him such evil and fahsha, meaning shameful deeds, that no one knows except Allah, and this is a necessary matter. There is no escaping from any of this. Okay. So here now we can add another thing now to al-kibr, al-hasad, al-ghadab, al-shahwa, and al-shirk. Al-shirk meaning attachment to other than Allah from the worldly affairs, the man is shirk. And likewise hawa, which is the absence of ikhlas. When there is hawa in a person's heart and he's drawn and enslaved by these other things. Then also from the diseases that we can add to all of this is the absence of as-sidq, being truthful, or the opposite, which is al-kadhib, lying. And lying takes on many forms and has many realities. Mutarraf, he said, سمعت مالك بن أنس يقول, I heard Malik bin Anas يقول, قلما كان رجل صادقا لا يكذب إلا متع بعقله ولم يصبه ما يصيب غيره من الهرم والخرف. He said, never does a man be truthful and not lie, except he will be able to enjoy his intellect. He will enjoy the presence of intellect, that he will have intellect when he's not a liar and he doesn't lie. And he will not be afflicted by what afflicts others of old age and feeble-mindedness. So telling lies and not being truthful is a cause of your intellect disappearing, and you becoming senile, and you becoming old, and you becoming feeble-minded. Lying is a cause of that, as we see from what Imam Malik said. So lying is also one of those things that goes alongside al-kibr, al-hasad, al-ghadab, al-shahwa, al-ta'alluq bighayrillah, al-hawa, because it is the opposite of as-sidq. And as we shall see at the end of this statement, inshallah, towards the end, that as-sidq, truthfulness, is the foundation of all of the actions of the heart. So Ibn al-Qayyim says, rahimahullah, iyaka wal-kadhib, beware of lying, for indeed it will corrupt your ability to imagine and conceive of the knowable things, right? So when you start lying, what's the effect of lying? When you tell lies, then really lying is a form of you deliberately not being able to imagine in your mind and to think in your mind correctly about things, about noble things. You will see things other than what they are upon, because you've lied to yourself. You're telling a lie, right? A lie is what opposes the truth. So when a lie opposes the truth, then the tasawwur in your mind has been corrupted, because you are not seeing a thing for what it is really, for what it really is. And likewise, when you tell a lie, you also corrupt other people's tasawwur as well. Right? So people who tell lies, what do? They corrupt the people's tasawwur, their ability to imagine, think, comprehend. Right? That becomes corrupted as well. فَإِنَّ الْكَاذِبِ يُصَوِّرُ الْمَعْدُومَ مَوْجُودًا وَالْمَوْجُودُ مَعْدُومًا وَالْحَقَّ بَاطِلًا وَالْبَاطِلَ حَقًّا وَالْخَيْرُ شَرًّا وَالشَّرَّ خَيْرًا. Right? So the liar, what's the liar doing effectively? The liar is saying, this thing that doesn't exist, exists. Or this thing that is, isn't. Or this thing that isn't, is. Right? Vice versa. Or he's saying that this thing which is true is false, and this thing which is false is true. And this thing which is good is evil, and this thing which is evil is good. Right? So basically everything, when a person tells a lie, this is basically what he's doing. Whether it's the lie told by a child to the parent, or a lie told by a man to himself to deceive himself, to delude himself, whatever that lie might be. What is he doing? He is corrupting his tasawwur. And this is the result. His tasawwur becomes corrupted, his knowledge becomes corrupted as a punishment upon him. And then likewise, he also corrupts it upon whoever he is speaking to. So he corrupts that person's tasawwur as well, which shows the evil of lying, the great evil of lying. Then he says, this person who lies, his soul is turning away from the established reality. Right? So whatever the true thing is that he's lying about, his soul is turning away from it. And instead, it prefers falsehood. Right? So now when you reach this level, when a person who lies, and that lying causes corruption in his tasawwur, right? So when a person who lies, that person's tasawwur now is corrupted. Meaning his ability to think and to know and to imagine and to process in his mind the knowable things, right? All that becomes corrupted in his mind. When that happens, that corruption now leads into his knowledge, which is the basis of his actions, right? Because the fi'l, iradi, behind it is knowledge. So then his actions become corrupt as a result. This is inevitable. A person who tells lies and his tasawwur becomes corrupted, it is inevitable that his actions too become lies. His actions become lies. So there's two types of lies. The lie that you tell on your tongue. So the lie starts in your soul, you tell it on your tongue. And then the lie then gets drawn from the tongue and it then goes into a person's actions as well. Right? So he says, وَسَرَى حُكْمُ الْكَذِبِ إِلَيْهَا فَسَارَ صُدُورُهَا أَنْهُ كَصُدُورِ الْكَذِبِ عَنِ اللِّسَانِ. So just like a person tells lies on the tongue, his actions too become lies. They become lies. They oppose what is the actual reality. So therefore this person, فَلَا يَنْتَفِئُ بِلِسَانِهِ وَلَا بِأَعْمَالِهِ, he does not benefit neither with his tongue, because he tells lies, nor does he benefit from his actions, because they too are lies. وَلِهَذَا كَانَ الْكَذِبْ أَسَاسُ الْفُجُورِ أَسَاسَ الْفُجُورِ. This is why lying is the foundation of all sin and disobedience. We need to understand this. Al-Kadhib is the asas, the foundation of all fujur. كما قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم إن الكذب يهدي إلى الفجور وإن الفجور يهدي إلى النار. Indeed, lying leads to sin, and sin leads to the hellfire. Right? So this is the nature and the reality of telling a lie, telling lies. And then he says, after this, the lie, it starts from the soul and goes to the tongue. And then it corrupts the tongue. Then it goes to the limbs, and then it corrupts the actions of the limbs. So people who tell lies, their actions also become corrupted. And then فَيَعَمُّ الْكَذِبْ أَقْوَالَهُ وَأَعْمَالَهُ وَأَحْوَالَهُ. So now lying itself, it now, all of his speech, all of his statement, and his general state of being, it now all turns into one big lie, becomes a lie. And so therefore now corruption settles in this person, and his disease will lead him to destruction if he is not given the cure by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is what? Which is as-sidqa, right? Which will cut off all of that evil from its beginning. So how do you cut off all of that corruption? It is to be truthful, it is sidq. And that's why وَلِهَذَا كَانَ أَصْلُ أَعْمَالِ الْقُلُوبِ كُلِّهَا الصِّدْقِ. This is why the foundation of all of the actions of the heart, they return back to as-sidq. So it becomes very simple. There's ikhlas and there is as-sidq. So if we establish these two things, then we are saved from all of these evils. All of these evils are what? They weaken Tawheed. What strengthens Tawheed? It is ikhlas and sidq. Ikhlas to Allah and being truthful in oneself, in one's speech, in one's actions. That is the asas of all other actions of the heart. Then he says, Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah, he says, the opposite of as-sidq is what? It is al-riya, it is al-ujab, it is showing off, it is to be amazed with oneself, it is al-kibr, it is arrogance, it is al-fakhr, it is boasting, wal-khayla, Wal-batar, it is to look down upon people, to disdain people. Wal-ashar, it is to be insolent. Wal-ajaz, incapability. Wal-kasal, laziness. Wal-jubn, cowardliness. Wal-mahana, to be lowly and vile. And all these other things, where do these come from? They come from lying. So the one who lies, then these are the qualities that are drawn by the action of lying. And the opposite, al-ikhlas, was sidq. Right? Then, they are the opposite of all of this. So then he says, فَكُلُّ عَمَلٍ صَالِحٍ ظَاهِرٍ أَوْ بَاطِنٍ فَمَنْشَأُهُ الصِّدْقَ. Every righteous action, whether inward or outward, what does it emanate from? What is it based upon? It is as-sidq. وَكُلُّ عَمَلٍ فَاسِدٍ ظَاهِرٍ أَوْ بَاطِنٍ فَمَنْشَأُهُ الْكَذِبِ. And every action which is corrupt, inward or outward, what does it emanate from? It is al-kadhib. It is a lie. And then Wallahu Ta'ala يُعَاقِبُ الْكَذَّابِ بِأَنْ يُقْعِدُهُ وَيُثْبِتُهُ عَنْ مَصَالِحِهِ وَمَنَافِعِهِ. So what is the punishment of Allah upon the liar? What he does is that he makes him dormant, and he makes him sit down, and he makes him lazy, and he makes him forget his beneficial interests in the life of this world. Right? In other words, the liar is punished by causing him to forget his beneficial interests. And وَيُثِيبُ الصَّادِقِ بِأَنْ يُوَفِّقَهُ لِلْقِيَامِ بِمِثَالِهِ دُنْيَاهُ وَآخِرَتِهِ. And as for the one who is sadiq, the truthful one, then Allah will reward him by giving him tawfiq in proceeding upon the beneficial interests of his worldly affairs and the affairs of the hereafter. And there is nothing that brings out benefit for your worldly affairs like sidq. Right? فَمَا اسْتُجْلِبَتْ مَصَالِحَ الدُّنْيَا وَالْآخِرَةِ بِمِثْلِ الصِّدْقِ. So the benefits of the world and the hereafter are not drawn out with the likes of truthfulness. Likewise, the corrupt and harmful elements of the world are not drawn out except with the likes of al-kadhib. And so that's why we see in the Quran, Allah Azza wa Jal inciting the believers, the people of Iman, to be truthful and to be with the truthful. So he says, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا اتَّقُوا اللَّهَ وَكُونُوا مَعَ الصَّادِقِينَ. O you who believe, have taqwa of Allah and be with those who are truthful, who are sadiqeen. هَذَا يَوْمُ يَنْفَعُ الصَّادِقِينَ صِدْقَهُمْ. يَنْفَعُ الصَّادِقِينَ صِدْقُهُمْ. This is the day on which the truthful people will be benefited by their sidq. هَذَا يَوْمُ يَنْفَعُ الصَّادِقِينَ صِدْقُهُمْ. This is the day in which the truthful people will be benefited by their truthfulness. So if you remain true in this life, on Yawm al-Qiyamah, you will then see the true benefit of that. And then the statement of Allah Azza wa Jal, فَإِذَا عَزَمَ الْأَمْرُ فَلَوْ صَدَقُوا اللَّهَ لَكَانَ خَيْرًا لَهُمْ. So when they are resolute upon the affair, if they were truthful to Allah, then that would have been better for them. And then we see a statement quoted from some of the Salaf also, مَنْ قَلَّ صِدْقُهُ قَلَّ صَدِيقَهُ. مَنْ قَلَّ صِدْقُهُ قَلَّ صَدِيقُهُ. That whoever's truthfulness diminishes, then his friends will also diminish. The liar cannot maintain friends because he's a liar. So anyhow, rounding all of this up, what do we have? We have also from the things that weaken Tawheed in the heart and which are the asas of fujur and sin and disobedience. Al-kadhib is the asas of all of that. And that fujur, as we said at the very beginning, al-fujur, as the sin, disobedience, is the cause of all calamities and trials and tribulations. And all of this is because of weakness of Tawheed in the hearts. Now we want to finish today's lesson by focusing a bit more upon this, a bit more inshallah, just to show you how one of these evils can itself lead into so many other evils as well. Right? And we'll take al-hasad as an example. We mentioned at the beginning al-hasad, envy. This is the cause of disbelief. It's the reason for disbelief. It's the disbelief of the Yahud, of the Jews, is because of hasad, because the revelation and the Prophet came to other than them and was taken away from them. So out of envy and jealousy, they rejected the truth, and it made them inherit other evils as well. So when you have one of these evils, as you've seen with lying causes corruption in tasawwur, in your ilm, that then leads corruption in your ilm and irada, then your actions become a lie, then your whole being becomes a lie. Then the affairs of your world become corrupted upon you as well. So we see these things lead to other things. So we want to illustrate this also with al-hasad. So as we said before, what we should understand so far, that when there is weakness of Tawheed in the heart, then certain of these things like ghadab and hasad, they enter into the heart. And when they enter into the heart, then they lead to dhulm, and they lead to other things like al-kibr and things like that. So we want to see the basic process, how that happens, just so that we have a good understanding of all of these evils. So Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, he speaks about jealousy. What is jealousy? And he says, some people say that it is to want the favor that someone else has, the mahsood, the one whom you're envying, to want that to stop. Right? So you see someone else having a favor, a bounty of the world, and you want that to stop in him because you want that as well. Right? This is the basic meaning of al-hasad. والتحقيق أن الحسد هو البغض والكراهة لما يراه من حسن حال المحسود. The reality of jealousy is that it is to hate and to dislike what you see of goodness in another person that you see, who you are envying, whom you are envying. And he says, وَالْمَقْصُودْ أَنَّ الْحَسَدْ envy مرض من أمراض النفس. It is a disease from the diseases of the soul. وَهُوَ مَرضٌ غَالِبٌ فَلَا يَخْلُصُ مِنْهُ إِلَّا قَلِيلٌ مِنَ النَّاسِ. And it is a disease which is general and overwhelming. Very, very few people can escape this envy. وَلِهَذَا يُقَالْ مَا خَلَى جَسَدٌ مِنْ حَسَدٍ لَكِنَّ اللَّئِيمِ يُبْدِيهِ وَالْكَرِيمِ يُخْفِيهِ. Right? It has been said, nobody is free of jealousy. Nobody is free of envy or jealousy. However, the lowly one makes it open and manifests it, and the honorable one, he keeps it inside and he conceals it. Right? So envy is something that everybody, most people, very rarely is a person free from envy. It is found in everybody. But the lowly person is the one from whom it now starts to manifest openly in his speech, in his, and the honorable one is the one who conceals it. وَقَدْ قِيلَ لِلْحَسَنِ الْبَصْرِ. It has been said to Al-Hasan al-Basri, does the believer have envy and jealousy? Does he become jealous? أَيَحْسُدُ الْمُؤْمِنِ فَقَالَ مَا أَنْسَاكَ إِخْوَةَ يُوسُف. So he said, what has made you to forget the brothers of Yusuf? لَا أَبًا لَكَ. May you have no father. وَلَكِنْ عَمِّهِ فِي صَدْرِكَ فَإِنَّهُ لَا يَضُرُّكَ مَا لَمْ تَعْدُ بِهِ يَدًا وَلِسَانًا. However, keep it within your heart, keep it, conceal it or resist it, for indeed it will not harm you so long as it does not transcend into your heart or your tongue. Right? So meaning al-hasad is something that everybody has, and but this al-hasad, if we don't do what Al-Hasan al-Basri said, then this will then lead to the next stage. This will lead into al-baghi. Al-Baghi is now into transgression. And that's why Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, he said, Al-Hasad yujibul baghi. Envy, it leads to transgression. So he said, Wal-Hasad yujibul baghi kama akhbar Allah ta'ala amman qablana. So envy now leads into transgression, al-baghi, because this is what happened to the people who came before us. He said, أنهم اختلفوا من بعد ما جاءهم العلم بغيا بينهم فلم يكن اختلافهم لعدم العلم بل علموا الحق ولكن بغى بعضهم على بعض كما يبغي الحاسد على المحسود. So he says, Allah told us about those who came before us that they differed with each other after the knowledge came to them, out of transgression against themselves. So it wasn't that they differed because they didn't have knowledge. It's not because of the knowledge. It's not because they differed on an issue of knowledge or the absence of knowledge. Rather, they knew the truth, but some of them transgressed against others. They fell into baghi. Just like the envious one, he transgresses against the one whom he envies. Right? So envy now leads into al-baghi. Now the reason why this is important to understand, truly and really, is because often many of the ikhtilafat that we see, the differences that we see, that occur and they arise, truly and really, as it is with Allah, the knower of all things, most of the time, or much of the time, if not most of the time, the asl of this differing is actual baghi and hasad. Right? So a person differs with somebody else on an issue. Well, let's say it could be to do with a ruling on a person or a mubtadi even, for example. Right? The reason why a person, where there's a difference, is because one person has al-hasad and al-baghi and is rejecting the truth, but the mas'ala itself simply becomes a means for putting his hasad and his baghi into play, if you understand what I mean. Right? And this is what Ibn Taymiyyah is saying, that it wasn't because of absence of knowledge, rather it was, they knew the truth, they knew had knowledge, but it was baghi, it is transgression that led them to that. So we have envy. If it is not controlled, it leads into al-baghi. Al-baghi now is transgression. From here, the transgression, al-baghi, what does it lead to? It also leads to fasad at-tasawwur, the third step now. It leads a person to now, again, have corruption in his tasawwur. And there's a passage here from Ibn Taymiyyah, I don't want to mention it for shortage of time, but basically what he's saying that, he's basically saying that why is it that for some people, for some narrators, we are not allowed to take their narration unless unless we make verification. There are some people we can't just take his narration when it's him on his own. We have to make tathabbut. Why is this that this happens for some people? The reason is because that when it comes to al-qiyas and al-i'tibar, like when it comes to issues of knowledge and reporting and so on and so forth, then al-dhulm and al-baghi can enter into these things. So we have to make verification, because we have to remove any possibility that dhulm and baghi has entered into that person's reporting by way of speech. Right? So, in other words, the very fact that the principle of verification exists and that we have to verify certain people's statements, the reason behind that is because there is dhulm and baghi, which leads to corruption in tasawwur, which leads to incorrect things being narrated, or things being narrated out of envy or whatever it might be, that entering into the narration. Right? So this is one of the reasons why we actually have to make tahqiq, why we have to make tathabbut, verification of certain people's statements, in order to eliminate this element, and from error creeping into that. So anyhow, so we have envy leads to al-baghi, which leads to the fasad of the tasawwur and ikhtilaf, this now can lead this then leads to al-kibr. Eventually it leads to al-kibr. As Ibn Taymiyyah said, فَالْكِبْر مِنْ أَعْظَمِ أَسْبَابِ الْإِنْصِرَافِ عَنِ الْحَقِّ. Or he says, وَذَلِكَ أَنَّ النَّفْسِ فِيهَا نَوْءٌ مِنَ الْكِبْر فَتُحِبُّ أَن تَخْرُجَ مِنَ الْعُبُودِيَّةِ وَالْإِتِّبَاعِ بحسب الإمكان كما قال أبو عثمان النيسابوري رحمه الله ما ترك أحد شيئا من السنة إلا لكبر في نفسه. So he said, the soul, within the soul, is something of pride or arrogance. Every soul has something of pride and arrogance, and it loves for it to depart from ubudiyah and from ittiba as much as would be able. Right? So meaning that within the soul, there is the desire to try to come out of ubudiyah if it could. As Abu Uthman al-Nisaburi said, rahimahullah, ما ترك أحد شيئا من السنة إلا لكبر في نفسه. No person abandoned something from the sunnah except on account of arrogance or pride in himself. Why does a person leave the sunnah? Right? It's because of some arrogance. The arrogance is there, but it has led him to abandon the sunnah. So now we are led to arrogance. A person becomes arrogant. He doesn't want to accept the truth. And then this arrogance in turn leads to jahl. It leads to ignorance. So see the whole process. Envy, it leads to transgression, al-baghi. That baghi leads you into corruption in your tasawwur. And ikhtilaf arises as a result. And from that ikhtilaf, because people do not want to accept the truth, there now becomes kibr. Some people are arrogant, they don't want to accept the truth. And then that arrogance in turn leads them back into jahl. And then there's some statements here from Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah. And he mentioned some ayat from the Quran about people on account of the arrogance. They are prevented from knowledge. And he mentions here, I'll mention just one of the things he quotes. He quotes a verse here from about the Jews and the Christians. لَتَجِدَنَّ أَشَدَّ النَّاسِ أَدَاوَةً لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا الْيَهُودِ وَالَّذِينَ أَشْرَكُوا وَلَتَجِدَنَّ أَقْرَبَهُمْ مَوَدَّةً لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا الَّذِينَ قَالُوا إِنَّا نَصَارَى ذَلِكَ بِأَنَّ مِنْهُمْ قِسِّيسِينَ وَرُهْبَانًا وَأَنَّهُمْ لَا يَسْتَكْبِرُونَ. So here in this ayah, you will find that amongst the people who are most severe in the enmity to those who believe are the Yahud and those who commit shirk with Allah, the Mushrikun. And you will find that those who are closest in their love to those who believe are the ones who say, indeed, we are Christians. That is because amongst them are qissisin, they are like priest worshippers, and because they are not arrogant. So explaining this ayah, Ibn Taymiyyah says, rahimahullah, that we see amongst the Christians, there is rahbah. There is like a type of fear, and there is the absence of kibr. So because they do not have these two traits, because they have these two traits, the rahbah and absence of kibr, then they are closer to guidance. They are closer to guidance. And that's why Allah mentioned in the Quran that those who became Muslim from the Christians, that when they listen to the Quran and what has been revealed to the messenger, you see tears coming out of their eyes because they recognize the truth and they say, رَبَّنَا آمَنَّا فَاكْتُبْنَا مَعَ الشَّاهِدِينَ. And they say, oh our Lord, we believe, write us amongst the witnesses. So this is speaking about An-Najashi and those who became Muslim from the Christians. Why? Because they had rahbah and they had adamul kibr, right? So they saw the truth and they accepted the truth. And Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu said that these are فَإِنَّ النَّصَارَى, indeed the Christians, they have qasd and ibadah, but they have no ilm and shahada. Right? So the Christians have the desire to want to worship, but they have no ilm. They have no knowledge. And for that reason, وَلِهَذَا كَانَ فَإِنْ كَانَ الْيَهُودِ, even though the Jews are worse than them in the sense that they are greater in their kibr and they are less in their fear and more hardened in their hearts, nevertheless the Christians are more evil than them from another angle, in the sense that they are greater in their misguidance and greater in their shirk, and greater in making unlawful what Allah made unlawful. So meaning, what he means here is, in the ayah it says the Yahud are greater in their enmity to those who believe. And this is because among the Yahud, with the Yahud, there is less rahbah, they don't fear Allah, and there is kibr, there is arrogance, and there is jealousy. So they are further away from the people of Iman than the Nasara. However, the Nasara, at the same time, even though they are closer from the angle they have desire for worship and they are not arrogant, they are actually more misguided. Why? Because of the absence of knowledge. Because of the absence of knowledge, they became more misguided, so they fell into actual shirk. They fell into shirk, and they fell into worshipping other than Allah. Right? So this is the justice with which the Muslims speak about the Yahud and the Nasara. The Yahud have truth, so they know what is Tawheed and what is shirk and things of that nature, but they are arrogant in accepting the Quran and the Messenger of Allah and so on and so forth. Whereas the Nasara, they are not arrogant and they want to worship, but they fell into shirk, so they are so they are more misguided in that respect, in that affair. Right? So this is how Ibn Taymiyyah has mentioned this, to show that this is what arrogance leads you to. It leads you to batarul haqq wa ghamtun nas. Right? It leads you to reject the truth and to look down upon the people. So the end result out of all of this, to come to a conclusion, is that we start with envy, and it eventually leads you to become ignorant, to have jahl, as happened to people that came before. So to round off and to really conclude today's lesson, how do we tie all of this together? What's the purpose? So we said that the tribulations and the calamities and the hardships that befall the ummah, the asl, the origin of all of that, it goes back to the heart. And Tawheed is mutually exclusive with fitna, as we saw in that ayah, حَتَّى لَا تَكُونَ fitna. And as Ibn Taymiyyah said, that the heart, in the heart, what is in the heart, whenever the heart, it makes all of the deen for Allah, then the fitna will end from the heart. Right? So everything revolves around the heart. No matter what calamity we are speaking of, whether it is a famine, whether it is the tyranny of a ruler, whether it is the subjugation of an enemy, like we see happening in the past and today, whether it is hardship in your worldly affairs, whether it is, like I said, poverty, no matter what the calamity, the asal of everything returns back to the heart. It begins with the heart. And so from those things that compete against the strength of Tawheed in the heart are basically these things that we mentioned. They are al-kibr, al-hasad, al-ghadab, al-shahwa, al-hawa, al-shirk, al-kadhib, lying. These are the actual reasons and foundations of everything that you see externally. And all of this is the weakness of Tawheed. And this is countered by what? It is countered by ikhlas, sincerity to Allah, and then as-sidq. As-sidq, we established, is what? It is the foundation of all of the other actions of the heart, which push out all of these things that we see, all of these evils that we see. And so therefore, if we want to put an end to calamities, if we want to put an end to hardships, then this is where we have to begin. This is where we have to start. It is the strengthening of Tawheed in the hearts. And I want to, since we have some moments here, I was going to mention this tomorrow, but I'll mention it today, just to tie all of it together so you understand that this is, there's a meaning and there's a connection between all of this. So I want to give you a story from the stories that I will mention again, inshallah, tomorrow. And this is reported by At-Tabari, rahimahullah, in his Tarikh, and others, in Al-Kamil, Ibn al-Athir, and others, Al-Bidayah wa Nihaya, Ibn Kathir, they all mention this story. And this story is from the year 642, or 20 years after Hijrah, in the Caliphate of Umar bin al-Khattab radiyallahu anhu. And as you know, that in his time, the Muslims expanded and they conquered many lands from the Rum and Faris, the Persians. And when the armies of Umar bin al-Khattab, they conquered Rome, they conquered Persia, there was a Persian king, a Persian Kisra, his name is Yazdajard, some funny Persian name. And when he was defeated and the land was taken from him, this Persian king, he wrote, or he sent letters through a messenger to the king of China, to one of the kings of China. And he requested from him al-aun, like he wanted help from him, because he had been defeated in the battle of Nahawand. You can check out this battle, the battle of Nahawand. It occurred in 642. And so this is where the Persian king was defeated. So after this defeat, he wrote a letter to a king of China, and requesting help. So this king of China wrote back, and he said, قد عرفت أن حقا على الملوك إنجاد الملوك على من غلبهم. He said, I know that it is the right upon the kings to help and to save other kings against those who have defeated them. But first of all, describe to me, فصف لي صفة هؤلاء القوم. Describe to me the description of these people, الذين أخرجوكم من بلادكم, who expelled you from your lands. So the messenger of this Persian king, he sent him and he said, ask me whatever you want, I will answer you about them. So the Chinese king said, أيوفون بالعهد. It's the first thing he said. He said, do they fulfill their covenants? Do these people who've conquered you, do they fulfill their covenants? So the messenger of the Persian king said, Na'am, yes, they do. Then the king of China said, ما يقولون لكم قبل أن يقاتلوكم. What do they say to you before they fight you? So the response came back and said, يدعوننا إلى واحدة من ثلاث. إما دينهم فإن أجبناهم أجرونا مجراهم أو الجزية والمنعة أو المنابذة. So he basically said, when these people fight us, this is what they say to us. They say to us, meaning this is what the Muslims or the armies of Umar, what they say to us. They say to us, look, either come to our religion. So before even fighting, they offer them the opportunity. We'll teach you about Islam. Become Muslims like us. You will be exactly like us. You will have the rights that we have. You will be our brothers. Right? So meaning that they want to avoid fighting by offering them to accept Islam. So we'll teach you, let's discuss, so all your misconceptions are removed. So you understand and you know what Islam is. Remove all the lies you've been told or the misconceptions you have or the ignorance that you're upon, so that you clearly understand what it is that you are fighting against. So either accept Islam and then you become exactly like us. You're just like us. Either this is what they say, or so if we agree to them, then they treat us just like themselves, or it is al-jizya, meaning they say to us, look, okay, if you don't want to accept Islam, fine, we'll take over this land. You pay us a small fee to avoid fighting, to avoid military duty, and for you is your religion, you can practice your religion, we guarantee your safety, and so on and so forth. So do that instead, and we'll avoid fighting. That's the second thing they say to us. And then the third thing, if we decide not to accept that, then obviously it is al-munabada, it is obviously, it is fighting. Right? So now the Chinese king has clearly understood the actual justice and the mercy of the Muslims and their armies in the way that they fight. Meaning that for them, it is not that they are fighting for land or for revenge or whatever. It is because they want guidance for the people, and these people have become willing obstacles to the message of Islam. So to avoid fighting, they offer these options first, and then when it becomes inevitable, then they will fight. So the Chinese king has now understood that these people are not some sort of oppressive, tyrannical, they're not more, there's something there. Then he says, فَكَيْفَ طَاعَتُهُمْ أُمَرَاءَهُمْ. How is their obedience to their leaders? So the messenger came back with a message. He said, أَطْوَعُ قَوْمٍ لِمُرْشِدِهِمْ. They are the most obedient of people to their leader. Meaning that there is loyalty between the subjects and between their leaders by way of obedience. So then he said, okay, فَمَا يُحِلُّونَ وَمَا يُحَرِّمُونَ. What is it they make halal? What is it they make haram? Like, what are the things that are halal and haram to them? What is the lawful and the unlawful? So then the messenger of the Persian king went and told him what is halal and haram. What is the Muslims? What do they eat? What do they drink? What are the actions that are halal and haram to them? So he told him something of the Sharia of Islam. Meaning, what is it that the Muslims enact? What is their Sharia? What governs them, and what are the actions of the tayyib and the khabith which they avoid, and the halal and the haram. So then, when he learnt all that, the Chinese king said, أَيُحَرِّمُونَ مَا حُلِّلَ لَهُمْ أَوْ يُحِلُّونَ مَا حُرِّمَ عَلَيْهِمْ. Do they make haram what has been made lawful for them, halal for them? And do they make halal what has been made haram for them? Meaning that do they alter and change their religion? So the messenger came back and said, La, no. So after understanding all of this about the people who defeated the Persian king, this was the response of the Chinese king. This was the response of the Chinese king. He said, فَإِنَّ هَؤُلَاءِ الْقَوْمِ. Indeed, those people لَا يَحْلُكُونَ أَبَدًا حَتَّى يُحِلُّوا حَرَامَهُمْ وَيُحَرِّمُوا حَلَالَهُمْ. He said, indeed, those people will never ever perish. These people who defeated you, they will never ever perish until they make halal their haram and they make haram their halal. Then he wrote a letter to the Persian king, and in that letter he said, إنه لم يمنعني أن أبعث إليك بجيش أوله بمر وآخره بالسين الجهال بما يحق علي. He said, indeed, nothing has prevented me from sending you an army. The first of which is at Marwa in Afghanistan, and the back of which is in China. Right? Meaning that I could send you an army this big. The first of them in Marw and the back of them in China. Nothing has prevented me from sending this. It's not because I'm ignorant of my duty towards you. ولكن هؤلاء القوم الذين وصف لي رسولك صفتهم. But those people whom your messenger described to me, لو يطاولون الجبال لحدوها. If they were to, wanted to conquer mountains, or if they wanted to destroy mountains, they would destroy them. And if I was left, if they were left with me, then they would put an end to me. So long as they are as you have described. So as long as they are as you described them, then make peace with them. فَسَالِمْهُمْ وَارْضَ مِنْهُمْ بِالْمُسَاكَنَةِ, and be pleased to live with them, and do not incite them so long as they are not going to incite against you. Rather, this is the response of the Chinese king. He said, you are never going to defeat those people. And obviously, what is the difference? What's the reason for that? Just like Shaykh Rabi' ibn Hadi, حفظه, mentioned 22 years ago in a statement in which he wrote, titled صيحة نذير إلى أمة الغضب, right? A warner's cry to the nation of wrath. In that, he said that he's speaking about the situation in that time and today, obviously, about how the Muslim Ummah is under humiliation and defeat and so on and so forth. He said, look, these people would never be given victory against the likes of the armies of Umar bin al-Khattab and Khalid bin al-Walid and Abu Ubaidah ibn al-Jarrah and the likes of those companions. And you can see here from this example that the ru'b, the fear in the heart of this Chinese king. You can see he said, I can't help you. They are indefeatable, right? They will even bring down mountains. You can't, as long as this is what they are described with, right? That they are just, and they fulfill their covenants, and they keep upon what is halal, keep upon what is haram, right? And they are indefeatable. And so he advised them to make peace and to, this is the ru'b, the awe that was in the hearts of those people. Because of what? Because of the likes of the iman of Abu Bakr and Umar and Uthman and Ali and al-Khalid bin al-Walid and the Sahaba and the strength of Tawheed in their hearts. Right? This is why. And this is how victory is obtained. It comes back down to these things. So this is why, as we said at the very beginning, the people of Tawheed and the Sunnah, they are the true rectifiers, because they understand the disease and they understand the cure. And that is why the people of innovation and misguidance, who always attack the people of the Sunnah, they always accuse us with names and labels, and they will perish. They will expire, they will perish, and the people of Tawheed and the Sunnah will remain standing, because what they are upon is the truth, and what they call to is the truth, and that's why they never turn back from their view, because by virtue of this. So we'll close now because it's time for Maghrib, inshallah. But this is obviously the first half of the talk. In tomorrow's talk, we want to look at examples from the prophets and messengers, and to see how Tawheed was the reason for the removal of calamities and victory over enemies. So we'll leave that for tomorrow. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi. Alhamdulillah. نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فإن أحسن الكلام كلام الله وخير الهدى هدى محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وإن شر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. So this is part 2 of the topic, the effects of Tawheed on removing calamities and defeating enemies. In the first lesson yesterday, we established a number of things. First of all, that trials, tribulations, calamities, whether at the level of the individual or the whole ummah, the asl of all of that returns back to sins and disobedience. That's very, very clear and apparent in the Quran. And we mentioned from Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah and Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahumullah, and that at-Tawheed and al-Fitna, they are mutually exclusive. So when there is Tawheed, when all of the deen is for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, meaning that a person has ikhlas, he has sidq, and he singles out Allah in worship with ikhlas and with sidq, then this wards off tribulation. And when there is the opposite, when there is shirk, when there is kadhib, when there is inconsistency in a person's speech and his behavior, which opposes Allah and His Messenger, this draws fitan to the heart. Everything returns back to the heart. And then after that, we mentioned numerous passages from Ibn al-Qayyim, Ibn Taymiyyah, speaking about really the roots of how Tawheed becomes weakened in the heart of a believer. What are the components of Tawheed and Iman being either removed or being weakened in the heart of the believer? And so they include things like, as Ibn al-Qayyim mentioned, the roots of disbelief or ingratitude. It is al-kibr, it is arrogance. When arrogance is present in the heart, when there is al-hasad, envy, anger, when there is al-ghadab, which is anger, and when there is ash-shahwa, which is desire and lust. And likewise, when there is ta'alluqul qalb bi ghayrillah, when the heart is attached to other than Allah. So this means things like, minor shirk, where a person is pursuing fame and fortune, or authority and power, or wealth. Person, his heart is attached to the world, and then there is a competition in his heart between attachment to Allah, attachment to the world. And this draws tribulation towards him. So this is hawa. This is hawa of various types. Likewise, there is kadhib, the opposite of as-sidq, being truthful. And so we mentioned from Ibn al-Qayyim again, how lying is something that corrupts an individual, corrupts his tasawwur, his thinking, corrupts his speech, corrupts his action, and then all sorts of tribulations are then drawn towards him. We then looked at specifically al-hasad, to show how even just one of these qualities in the heart, it leads to so many other evils. So we mentioned again, quoting from some of the ulama, how al-hasad in the heart, it leads to al-baghi, transgressing the limits. And al-baghi leads to ikhtilaf, differing. After knowledge comes. And then this differing leads to al-kibr, meaning one party is refusing to accept the truth. And that kibr itself, it makes a person inherit jahl. Because the one who is mustakbir, who is arrogant, is not willing to accept the truth. And so therefore he's deprived of knowledge, and therefore he inherits ignorance as a result. And this is the way of the Nasara and the Yahud as well, the Yahud in particular, because they are arrogant, and as a result of that arrogance, they inherit ignorance. So to finish yesterday's lesson, I mentioned a story from the time of Umar bin al-Khattab, or after him shortly, with his armies when they conquered Persia, and the Persian king sought some help from a Chinese king. And so he sent some messengers with letters backward and forward, and the essence of it was, the Chinese king said that yes, I know it's obligatory for a king to assist other kings when they request help. However, I need to know about these people who have defeated you. I want to know, who are they? So, between the exchanges, the Chinese king asked, do these people fulfill their covenants? And the answer was, yes, they do. And he asked, what do they do before they fight you? And then he was told, well, first of all, they invite us to Islam. They ask us to become like them, so that we are treated exactly the same as them, that we become Muslim. If not, they offer us to pay the jizya and to live under them, whereby we can freely practice our religion. And if not, then it is simply fighting. So they offer us all of these options first before they actually fight us. Then he said, well, how are they with respect to their leaders? And he was told they are most obedient to their leaders. And then he said, what do they make halal, what do they make haram? And then he was told the things that the Muslims considered to be halal and considered to be haram. And then finally he said, do they make the halal to be haram and the haram to be halal? And he was told, no, they don't. So once he learned all of these things about the Muslim armies, he said his advice to the Persian king was that even though I am able to bring a great army, a tremendous army for you, the first part, the front of which is in Afghanistan, today's Afghanistan, in Marw, and the last part of which is in China. I'm able to do that. However, these people simply cannot be destroyed. These people you've described, they will not perish. And these people, if they were to conquer a mountain or destroy a mountain, they would be able to do so. So the best thing for you to do, as long as these people are like you described, is to make peace with them, live under them, live with them, and do not incite them, as long as they do not fight or incite against you. So we finished with this story yesterday to show the maqsood, or the intent to behind this story, and it leads us to other similar stories from the prophets and messengers, was to show that just look at how in the heart of these people there was ru'b, fear and awe in that time, because of what they saw from the Muslims of truthfulness, of the affairs of unity, in the sense that they obey their rulers, in the sense that they do not alter their religion. What is halal is halal, what is haram is haram, and that they are just in the way that they offer choices before they actually fight, that they are just. The non-Muslims recognized these affairs, and they had ru'b in their hearts, just like we see in that hadith about how the nations are about to invite themselves over you, just as a group of people invite each other to eat from a plate. In that hadith it mentions that you will not be small in number, but you will be like the scum on the ocean. And there will be weakness in your heart, which is love of the world and fear of death. And the fear in the hearts of your enemies will be removed. Now if you think and you reflect today, what do you see? You see, first of all, the presence of evil scholars, making halal what Allah made haram, like Yusuf al-Qardawi, al-halal wal-haram fil Islam. Everything is making halal, 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 halal. Everything, music is now halal. This is halal. This is halal. People making music halal. People making singing halal. People making riba halal. Right? Likewise, what do you see in the Muslim lands where we are supposed to obey the ruler in the ma'roof, and maintain unity and order? What do we see? We have democracy, we have party politics, we have revolutions, we have civil strife, we have people nurtured by the Khawarij and the people of unbelief to hate and detest the Muslim rulers. We accept that they have shortcomings. But all of this, you see, this undermines the strength and the unity, right? So all of these things are present. The Muslims do not fulfill their trusts, right? They cannot be trusted. They are treacherous. They enter non-Muslim nations under treaty, under contract, and then they steal, cheat, embezzle, do all sorts of things which they are breaking their treaties, breaking their contracts. So what do you expect would be the perception of the non-Muslims to Muslims who are like this? Would it be like the perception of that Chinese king and his fear and awe of the armies of Umar bin al-Khattab? Do you think this is how they see the Ummah? No, they are laughing at the Ummah. They are watching and laughing at the state of the Muslims. at evil scholars who make halal for them what is clearly haram. Right? So, from that story that I mentioned yesterday, this is a bridge that's really kind of a bridge from the first lesson to the second lesson. So we want to remain discussing. As I said, we'll mention many examples to show the effect of Tawheed, the role of Tawheed in removing calamities and defeating enemies. So first of all, a quote from Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah from al-Fawa'id, and he says, "At-Tawheed mafza'u a'da'ihi wa awliya'ihi." Tawheed is the sanctuary, or the place of refuge for his enemies and his allies. So you might think, how does this title make sense? How can Ibn al-Qayyim say that Tawheed is a place of refuge for both his enemies and his allies? How does this make sense? So he says, فَأَمَّا أَعْدَاؤُهُ فَيُنَجِّيهِمْ مِنْ كُرَبِ الدُّنْيَا وَشَدَائِدِهَا. So he says, as for his enemies, the enemies of Allah, then Allah saves them from the calamities of the world and the hardships. And then he mentions the ayah in the Quran, فَإِذَا رَكِبُوا فِي الْفُلْكِ دَعَوُوا اللَّهَ مُخْلِصِينَ لَهُ الدِّينَ فَلَمَّا نَجَّاهُمْ إِلَى الْبَرِّ إِذَا هُمْ يُشْرِكُونَ. So when they, the polytheists, they ride upon the ship in the sea, then they invoke Allah, making the religion purely and sincerely for Him. But then when He delivers them to the land in safety, then they commit their shirk. So this is an evidence that Tawheed even benefits and saves the enemies of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These are polytheists. And in a moment of extreme difficulty and hardship, as we see in some of the books of tafsir, these people, they used to take the idols onto the ships, and then when the ocean became rough and they were about to perish, they would throw all the idols off the ships and then invoke only Allah alone. Then Allah would respond to them and save them. Right? So this shows that even Tawheed even benefits the mushrik in the moment in which he singles out Allah in his dua, in his isti'adha, in his isti'ana, in his istighatha, and he abandons his gods. Then this shows the effect of Tawheed even for the mushrik. Then he says, وَأَمَّا أَوْلِيَاؤُهُ فَيُنَجِّيهِمْ بِهِ مِنْ كُرَبَاتِ الدُّنْيَا وَالْآخِرَةِ وَشَدَائِدِهَا. As for his awliya, his allies, then he delivers them and saves them from the calamities of the world and of the hereafter and the hardships. وَلِذَلِكَ فَزِعَ إِلَيْهِ يُونُسُ فَنَجَّاهُ اللَّهُ مِنْ تِلْكَ الظُّلُمَاتِ. For that reason, when Yunus alayhi salam, when he took refuge in Allah, then Allah delivered him and saved him from those darknesses. He was in the ocean, in the belly of the fish, in the whale. وَفَزِعَ إِلَيْهِ أَتْبَاءُ الرُّسُلِ فَنَجَوْا بِهِ مِمَّا عُذِّبَ بِهِ الْمُشْرِكُونَ فِي الدُّنْيَا وَمَا أُعِدَّ لَهُمْ فِي الْآخِرَةِ. Likewise, the followers of the messengers, they were delivered and saved by way of Tawheed. And they were saved from that which Allah punished the polytheists with in this life and the next. And he said likewise, وَلَمَّا فَزِعَ إِلَيْهِ فِرْعَوْنَ عند معاينة الحلاك وإدراك الغرق لم ينفعه لأن الإيمان عند المعاينة لا يقبل. Even Fir'aun, at the moment of his destruction, at the point of his death, he called out, as we see in an ayah in the Quran, حتى إذا أدركه الغرق قل آمنت أنه لا إله إلا الذي آمنت به بنو إسرائيل وأنا من المسلمين. This is what he said. He said, I believe that there is none worthy of worship except the ilah which the Banu Israel believe in. I believe in that ilah. And I am from among the Muslims. However, as Ibn al-Qayyim says, that belief when you actually see, when you are at the point of death and you see, then it is no longer acceptable. So he sought refuge in Tawheed, but it was too late for him. And then Ibn al-Qayyim says, هَذِهِ سُنَّةُ اللَّهِ فِي عِبَادِهِ. This is the sunnah of Allah among His servants. فَمَا دُفِعَتْ شَدَائِدُ الدُّنْيَا بِمِثْلِ التَّوْحِيدِ. The calamities of the world are not repelled with anything with the likes of Tawheed. وَلِذَلِكَ كَانَ دُعَاءُ الْكَرْبِ بِالتَّوْحِيدِ. This is why that when you are in a calamity and a hardship, then you make dua to Allah by mention of Tawheed. وَدَعْوَةُ ذِي النُّونِ التي ما دعا بها مكروب إلا فرج الله كربه بالتوحيد. And likewise the dua of Yunus, Dhunnun, the one who, when he called upon Allah, then Allah relieved him of his calamity by way of Tawheed. فلا يلقى في الكرب العظام إلا الشرك ولا ينجي منها إلا التوحيد. So nothing throws people into calamities, mighty great calamities, except shirk. And nothing delivers from them except Tawheed. فهو مفزع الخليقة وملجأها وحصنها وغياثها وبالله التوفيق. So therefore this Tawheed, what is it? Tawheed is the sanctuary. It is the place of refuge for all of the creation. And the place of refuge, it is the fortress, and it is the thing which gives help, which gives relief and help. So as you can see from this statement of Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah, we see first of all the mushrikun. So let's give that as the first example. He mentioned the ayah, فَإِذَا رَكِبُوا فِي الْفُلْكِ دَعَوُوا اللَّهَ مُخْلِصِينَ لَهُ الدِّينَ, to the end of the ayah. And Imam al-Tabari rahimahullah, he says that Allah Ta'ala, he said, when those mushrikun, when they ride upon the ship in the sea and they fear destruction and drowning, what do? دَعَوُوا اللَّهَ مُخْلِصِينَ لَهُ الدِّينَ. They invoke Allah, making the religion purely and sincerely for Him alone. So At-Tabari says, يقول أخلصوا لله عند الشدة التي نزلت بهم التوحيد. So when the calamity befell them, they made Tawheed purely and sincerely for Allah. وَأَفْرَدُوا لَهُ الطَّاعَةِ. They made obedience to Allah alone. وَأَذْعَنُوا لَهُ بِالْعُبُودِيَّةِ. And they submitted to Him in servitude. وَلَمْ يَسْتَغِيثُوا بِآلِهَتِهِمْ وَأَنْدَادِهِمْ. They did not seek rescue from their gods or the rivals which they made for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَلَكِنْ بِاللَّهِ الَّذِي خَلَقَهُمْ. However, it is by Allah who created them. فَلَمَّا نَجَّاهُمْ إِلَى الْبَرِّ. But then when He saved them and brought them to the land, فَسَارُوا إِلَى الْبَرِّ. So then they came to the land, then they start to make shirk again, and they associate partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is very clear. We mentioned that earlier, that even the people of shirk, they benefit from Tawheed. It is their refuge when they are in calamities and hardships. And even though these are polytheists who believe in Allah, they worship other than Allah, this also applies to any person in any hardship or difficulty, until even the atheist, when he's about to drown, for example, and he knows all of the asbab have been cut off, there is no one to save him, there is no one present, in his heart there's a motion towards the sky, there is a talab in the heart for something to save him. And this is a fitrah, this is turning to Allah naturally, even though in his mind he's not thinking of Allah, the heart is wishing and hoping that something or someone can actually save him, despite his knowledge that all of the asbab have been cut off and there is no rescue, right? The heart still has a motion towards something. So this is something fitri, it is something natural, and it is necessary. And so this is a proof that the hearts of all of mankind, they seek refuge in the Tawheed of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in times of hardship and calamity, and this is a hujjah against them. It's a proof against them. Likewise, Yunus alayhi salam, as Ibn al-Qayyim mentioned, this is an example of extreme hardship and calamity. You are in the belly of a whale, you are in the ocean, in the darkness, and how do you deliver yourself from this situation? We see mentioned in the Quran, وَظَنُّونَ إِذْ ذَهَبَ مغاضبا فظن أن لن نقدر عليه فنادى في الظلمات أن لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك إني كنت من الظالمين فاستجبنا له ونجيناه من الغم وكذلك ننجي المؤمنين. So Dhunnun, when he went in anger, the reason why he was angry is because his people, they rejected him, and he was anticipating that Allah should punish them. However, his people, they made tawbah, they repented for days, and eventually Allah accepted their repentance, and so they came back to the truth. However, Yunus alayhi salam, he was angry, and as the story, he went on a ship, and then he was tossed out of the ship, and he was swallowed by a whale. So in that situation, he made this dua. La ilaha illa ant subhanaka inni kuntu min al-zalimin. So what is the Tawheed? What is it that saved him by way of this supplication? Ibn al-Qayyim explains, he says, وَأَمَّا دَعْوَةُ ذِنُّونَ فَإِنَّ فِيهَا مِنْ كَمَالِ التَّوْحِيدِ وَالتَّنْزِيهِ لِلرَّبِّ تَعَالَى وَاعْتِرَافِ الْعَبْدِ بِظُلْمِهِ وَذَنْبِهِ. He says, in this supplication of Dhunnun, within it is the perfection of Tawheed, La ilaha illallah, and there is tanzih, there is freeing Allah from all imperfections, meaning subhanak, this is the meaning of subhanak, that free and remote are you from every imperfection, every shortcoming, every flaw. And then there is i'tiraf, acknowledgement by the servant of his oppression and of his sin. And this is from the most far-reaching of treatments for the calamity and for anxiety and for grief. Right? So this dua of Yunus alayhi salam, it is the greatest type of medicine for a calamity, because and the most effective of means in reaching Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in fulfilling one's needs. He says, فَإِنَّ التَّوْحِيدِ وَالتَّنْزِيهِ يتضمنان إثبات كل كمال لله وسلب كل نقص وعيب وتمثيل عنه. Right, so these are the elements. First of all, establishing Tawheed for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then negating from him all imperfections, and then والاعتراف بالظلم يتضمن إيمان العبد بالشرع والثواب والعقاب. So when a person acknowledges his dhulm, so when you admit in front of Allah and you vocalize your error and your slip, meaning you say, I made an error, I was oppressive, I wronged myself, meaning you vocalize the error that you fell in, then all of this is part of acknowledging one's sin and acknowledging one's ubudiyah to Allah and acknowledging one's need to Allah. So there are 4 elements in all of this that Ibn al-Qayyim mentions in this dua, which are the reason why it is the dua of removal of calamity. He said, فَهَا هُنَا أَرْبَعُةُ أُمُورٍ قَدْ وَقَعَ التَّوَسُّلُ بِهَا. So Yunus alayhi salam made tawassul to Allah by way of 4 things: at-tawheed, wat-tanzih, wal-ubudiyah, wal-i'tiraf. There are 4 things: at-tawheed, at-tanzih, which is to free Allah from imperfections and shortcomings, wal-ubudiyah, which is the state of being in servitude and in need. So this is present in the heart. Wal-i'tiraf, and acknowledgement of the sin. So this is a clear example from one of the prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala of the tremendous effect of Tawheed in such a difficult situation, as we said, in the ocean, in the belly of the whale, in multiple layers of darkness, and then he made dua with this supplication. A second example that we can give to show the effect of Tawheed, or the manifestation of the strength of Tawheed, is an amazing example and an often overlooked or hidden example from Hud alayhi salam, the Prophet Hud. So in Surah Hud, وَإِلَىٰ عَادٍ أَخَاهُمْ هُودًا, we sent to Ad, their brother Hud, قَالَ يَا قَوْمِ اعْبُدُوا اللَّهِ مَا لَكُم مِّنْ إِلَٰهٍ غَيْرُهُ. So he called them to Tawheed: "O my people, worship Allah. There is none worthy of worship besides Him. You have no other deity besides Him. إِنْ أَنْتُمْ إِلَّا مُفْتَرُونَ. You are fabricating. You are lying. يَا قَوْمِ لَا أَسْأَلُكُمْ عَلَيْهِ أَجْرًا. I'm not asking you for any reward. إِنْ أَجْرِيَ إِلَّا عَلَى اللَّهِ. My reward for calling you is upon إِلَّا عَلَى الَّذِي فَطَرَنِي, is only upon the one who originated me. أَفَلَا تَعْقِلُونَ. Will you not then have sense? And then he called them further: O my people, استغفروا ربكم, seek forgiveness from Allah, ثم توبوا إليه, then make tawbah to Him, and then Allah will send upon you the rain, and He will increase you in your strength on top of your strength. And do not turn your backs as criminals. What was their response to him, right? So he's calling them to Tawheed. So they say to him, Ya Hud, ما جئتنا ببينة, you've not brought any evidence, any clear proof for us. وما نحن بتاركي آلهتنا, we're not going to abandon our gods, just for your statement, for your speech. وما نحن لك بمؤمنين, and we do not believe in you. And we believe that our gods have afflicted you with evil. Our gods have, they've afflicted you with an illness or something, and that's why you're saying what you're saying. So this is their response to Hud alayhi salam, right? So he called them to Tawheed. He told them to abandon shirk. He told them, I'm not seeking any gain in any of this. I'm not asking for any money. Allah is the one who will reward me. He told them to make istighfar. He told them to make tawbah. And if they do so, Allah will give them increase and make them even more powerful, because they were a powerful nation, even more powerful than the power they already have. So when they clearly explained their rejection, what did he respond? He said, Inni ushhidullah washhadu anni bari'un mimma tushrikun. He said, indeed, I call Allah as a witness, and you bear witness as well, that I am free from the shirk that you commit, from that which you worship besides Him. Now this is the part now. He said, فَكِيدُونِي جَمِيعًا ثُمَّ لَا تُنذِرُونَ. So all of you come together and plot against me, and do not give me any respite. Do whatever you want. Plot against me, all of you come together. Inni tawakkaltu ala Allah. Indeed, I rely upon Allah. Rabbi wa Rabbukum. He is your Lord, my Lord and your Lord. Ma min dabatin illa huwa akhidhun binasiyatiha. There is no creature except that He is the one who takes it by its forelock. Inna Rabbi ala siratin mustaqim. Indeed, my Lord is upon a straight path. Okay, where is the ayah in this? Ibn al-Qayyim, rahimahullah, he explains to us the ayah in this. Look at what he says. He says, Inna min akhfa ayatir rusul ayatu Hudin alayhi salam. He says, indeed, the most obscure or hidden of the signs of the messengers is the sign of Hud alayhi salam. Meaning, what he means here is that we know that the signs of the messengers are all apparent and open, right? So the sign of Musa alayhi salam, the miracles he was given, which he showed to Fir'aun, these are open signs. The staff, the hand, the various other ayat, the splitting of the moon of the messenger of Allah, it's visual, we can see it. The she camel of Salih alayhi salam, Right? These are ayat which are open, apparent, which we all recognize and see. However, one of the signs which is obscure, meaning that it is not very apparent, it is the ayah of Hud alayhi salam. And he said, حَتَّى قَالَ لَهُ قَوْمُهُ. So his people said to him, O Hud, you haven't come to us with any clear proof. Show us a clear proof. And this is despite the fact that his bayyinah, his proof or his evidence, was the most clearest of evidences. What was that evidence? وَقَدْ أَشَارَ إِلَيْهَا بِقَوْلِهِ. So what is this bayyinah? The bayyinah is that Hud said to them, indeed, I call Allah as a witness, and I call you to witness, that I am free from that which you associate with him in worship, besides him. And then he said, فَكِيدُونِي جَمِيعًا. So plot all of you together, and then do not give me any respite. Indeed, I rely upon Allah, my Lord and your Lord, to the end of the ayah. So what's the ayah here? How is this a bayyinah? How is this a hujjah? Right? It is a hujjah because he says, فَهَذَا مِنْ أَعْظَمِ الْآيَاتِ أَنَّ رَجُلًا وَاحِدًا يُخَاطِبُ أُمَّةً عَظِيمَةً بِهَذَا الْخِطَابِ. Right? So this is the ayah, that there is one man, one prophet, speaking and addressing an entire nation. This is an entire nation. It's a mighty nation. He's standing up to one mighty nation who, as we already see in the verse, that they already have quwwah, they already have strength. So he's standing in front of them, غَيْرُ جَزِعٍ وَلَا فَزِعٍ. So he's standing without any despair, any fear, وَلَا خَوَّارٍ, without any weakness, بَلْ وَاثِقٌ مِمَّا قَالَهُ جَازِمٌ بِهِ. And he is saying what he is saying with absolute, full, complete trust in that, and with absolute certainty and resolution in what he's saying to them. And he has called Allah a witness, first of all, that he is free from their religion. So he's freeing himself from their religion and what they are upon. And he is informing his people that Allah is his wali, Allah is his nasir, and that Allah will never give them subjugation over him. Right? So this is the ayah, right? This is the ayah. That you are an entire nation, and I want all of you to plot against me, and do not give me any respite. Come and destroy me. Allah is my Lord, I rely upon him, and he will never allow you to do so. He will never allow you to do so. And this is the ayah, that you will not be able to harm him or to destroy him. And then he openly announced himself to be free from their religion. And then he proceeded to make mockery of them and to belittle them, as Ibn al-Qayyim says, ثُمَّ أَقَّدَ عَلَيْهِمْ ذَلِكَ بِالْإِسْتِهَانَةِ بِهِمْ وَاحْتِقَارِهِمْ وَازْدِرَائِهِمْ وأنهم لو يجتمعون كلهم على كيده وشفاء غيظهم منه. So even if they all gathered together to destroy him and to vent out their anger and get their vengeance against him, right, they would never be able to do so. So he's actually mocking them and showing their weakness, and that they will fail. So the ayah in all of this, let's just try to let's understand the importance of this. First of all, what's the actual point of dispute? Right? What's the point of dispute between Hud alayhi salam and his people? Is it a dispute to do with land? Is it to do with land? Is it to do with some money or wealth? Is it economy? Is it like, what's the point of dispute on the basis of which he is saying, I am free from you and your religion, so plot all of you against me? What's the asal of the dispute? It is Tawheed, right? And it is because of that Tawheed and that moral force of Tawheed that he is saying what he is saying. And on the basis of which he knows with certainty that Allah is with him and they can never ever harm him, they can never ever destroy him, and he will be the victor. He will be the victor. Right? There's a lesson in this for us, that when we look at the conflicts that take place or have taken place or do take place, we ask, what's the point of dispute here? Like, what are you fighting over? What is it? Is it land? And that's why we see from the Ikhwanis, they say our dispute is not about religion, it is about land. Hassan al-Banna, Qaradawi, even the leader and the founder of one of these groups, we have no issue with the Yahud, it's land. Right? So you are now fighting about land. So how do you expect, what moral authority, what force, what strength are you standing upon if that is the basis of your dispute? You will not receive the help that the prophets and messengers received. You will not be able to speak with that type of language that we see Hud alayhi salam speaking with. You will not anticipate the help of Allah in the way that we see Hud alayhi salam anticipate the help of Allah. So you see the difference. We have to look at what are we saying to the people. Is it that your deen is batil? You commit shirk? You think yourselves to be pieces of God? You think other people should worship you? You are Tawheed because you call to your worship. You have an altered book that you write and twist and distort with your own hands. Repent to Allah. Leave this arrogance. Accept the message. Is this the point of dispute? Or is it because my home, my land, my nationality, my qawm? What's the dispute? We have to be brutally honest. We have to be brutally frank. And this is something which only the people of Tawheed and the Sunnah, which they do. The people of Tawheed and the Sunnah, they are brutally frank with themselves. And with the Ummah of Islam, they ask these difficult questions. And they're not swayed by emotion. Right? It doesn't mean that there isn't right and wrong, justice and injustice. We accept there is justice and injustice when we see, for example, the Yahud doing what they are doing. There's justice and injustice. We accept all of that. However, we have to be brutally frank and brutally honest and look at the realities as they actually are. Just like the scholars have said, that the Muslim lands have been plagued with qawmiyya, al-qawmiyya al-arabiyya, al-ishtirakiyya, al-shiyu'iyya, all these ideologies, Arabic nationalism, communism, socialism, right? What are the banners that are being raised when you are faced in a conflict with the a'da of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? What's the asl of the, right? So this is what we have to look at. And so when you read this example of Hud alayhi salam, one man challenging an entire nation, saying what he is saying, with absolute conviction because he knows the dispute is on the basis of Tawheed. Right? And as we see in other parts of the other places in the Quran, وَإِنَّ جُنْدَنَا لَهُمُ الْغَالِبُونَ, indeed it is our soldiers who will be victorious. All of that is on the basis of Tawheed. So anyhow, Ibn al-Qayyim continues further, and he says at the end, فَأَيُّ آيَةٍ وَبُرْحَانٍ وَدَلِيلٍ أَحْسَنُ مِنْ آيَاتِ الْأَنْبِيَاءِ وَبَرَاهِينِهِمْ وَأَدِلَّتِهِمْ. What types of evidences are better than the ayat, the signs of the prophets and the evidences? And this is a testimony from Allah subhanahu for them, which Allah explained to His servants. So this is the example of Hud alayhi salam that I wanted to mention. Another example of the effect of Tawheed. So remember, these are all different scenarios. The example of a victorious army and the Chinese king who feared and stepped back, say, I can't help you against the people who are like that. Right? This is one scenario. The scenario of Yunus alayhi salam in the depths of the ocean. The scenario of Hud alayhi salam, a man facing a mighty nation and facing up to them with bravery, with courage, without any fear. Why? Because it's what's in the heart of this Tawheed. And now we have another example, another scenario, and this is Yusuf alayhi salam, who was put into prison, put into trial, by way of something he did not do, and he was thrown into prison. And what do we see of the hal of the Anbiya, the way of the prophets, despite the fact that they are in trials and calamities? What do? What's at the front of what's their greatest concern? It is Tawheed. So we see Yusuf alayhi salam when he's in the prison, and there occurs in Surah Yusuf when the two prisoners came to him, and they told him that they had certain dreams. One of them is pressing grapes for wine. Another one sees a bird pecking at his head. And so look at this amazing manhaj of da'wah in this story, right? So in the passage in the Quran, he says to them that, first of all, he says, قَالَ لَا يَأْتِكُمَا طَعَامٌ تُرْزَقَانِهِ إِلَّا نَبَّأْتُكُمَا بِتَأْوِيلِهِ, that no food will come to you except that I will inform you about its explanation. So in other words, there's a whole explanation behind the wisdom in what Yusuf alayhi salam did. Basically, in that prison, as Ibn Kathir explains, he spent a long time there, and during his time there, the people came to see his good manners, his trustworthiness, that he's truthful, that he worships a great deal, and so they became to trust him. He would visit the sick, he would do all sorts of things, fulfill their rights. And in this good atmosphere, these two men entered into the prison, and they said what they said. So in giving them da'wah, the first thing that he said was to show them a sign so that they can have trust in what he is about to say after that. So he said to them, no food is going to come to you except that I will explain to you that food. Meaning what it is it hot, is it cold, what type of food is it? So that they can have trust that this is an ayah for them to believe in him and to trust and accept what he's going to say. So then, after doing that, he then began by giving them da'wah. So he didn't explain the dream straight away. He first of all began by making da'wah, giving da'wah to these two men. How did he give da'wah? There's a methodology in here. He said, إِنِّي تَرَكْتُ مِلَّةَ قَوْمٍ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ بِاللَّهِ وَهُمْ بِالْآخِرَةِ هُمْ كَافِرُونَ. First of all, he says to these people, remember these people are not Muslim, these two men. He says, indeed, I have abandoned the religion of a people who do not believe in Allah and who do not believe in the hereafter. They are disbelievers in the hereafter. He doesn't mean that I used to be upon that religion. He simply means that I am free of. And I do not subscribe to a religion in which a people do not believe in Allah and do not believe in the hereafter, right? So he's describing his hal, his condition, that I am not from the people of that religion, first of all, right? So what he's doing, this is like a precursor to other things. Then he says, وَاتَّبَعْتُ مِلَّةَ آبَاءِ إِبْرَاهِيمَ وَإِسْحَاقَ وَيَعْقُوبَ. Rather, I am a follower of the religion of my forefathers, Ibrahim and Ishaq and Yaqub. And what is that religion? مَا كَانَ لَنَا أَن نُشْرِكَ بِاللَّهِ مِنْ شَيْءٍ. It is not for us to associate any partners with Allah. This is the religion that he is upon. ذَلِكَ مِنْ فَضْلِ اللَّهِ عَلَيْنَا وَعَلَى النَّاسِ وَلَكِنَّ أَكْثَرَ النَّاسِ لَا يَشْكُرُونَ. This is Allah's favor and bounty upon us and upon the people. However, most people are not grateful. So he's alluding to these men that most people fall short in being grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? So look at all the things he's saying to these two men. He's freeing himself from false religion. He's praising and thanking Allah for the millah that he's following, which is that we do not commit shirk with Allah in anything. And then he's pointing out the deficiency of mankind in falling short in worshipping their Lord. And then he says, so after mentioning this, now he invites them and he calls them, he says to them, gives them da'wah. He says, Ya sahibay as-sijn, a'arbabun mutafarriquna khayrun am Allahu al-wahidul qahhar. He says, O two companions, now he's addressing them. Are multiple lords, multiple deities, split, separate, multiple deities, are they better? Or is it Allah, who is al-wahid, the one who is al-qahhar, the one who is the subduer of all creatures? ما تعبدون من دونه إلا أسماء سميتموها أنتم وآباؤكم ما أنزل الله بها من سلطان. So he says, what you worship besides him, these are just names that you have invented. You've made these names, you and your forefathers. Allah gave you no authority for any of this. إن الحكم إلا لله أمر ألا تعبدوا إلا إياه ذلك الدين القيم ولكن أكثر الناس لا يعلمون. Indeed, the judgment belongs to Allah. He has commanded that you worship none but Him alone. This is the upright religion, but most of the people do not know. Now, you can see from all of this, there's some commentary here. I won't go through it for the sake of time, from Imam al-Sa'di rahimahullah. And this is the manhaj of da'wah. And he is in the prison. And this shows that even in the direst of circumstances, the people of Tawheed never neglect the affair of Tawheed, because it is the foundation of everything. When the Messenger of Allah was going to the battle of Hunayn, as you know the story, there were some from the companions who recently left Kufr and came into Islam, and they saw that the people of the shirk, they used to hang on the trees like a that and what, and they requested the same thing from the Messenger of Allah. Did the Messenger of Allah say, well, no, we're going to fight now, we're going into a battle, it's a dire situation, why are you speaking about these things, let's ignore this for now? No, he there and then, he put an end to it there and then. So Tawheed does not stop, no matter what situation you are in, no matter what calamity you are in. Whether you are ill, Tawheed does not stop. Whether you are subdued, occupied, subjugated, oppressed, Tawheed does not stop. Whether you are in prison, Tawheed does not stop. Makes no difference. Whether you are rich, whether you are poor, Tawheed does not stop. In poverty, Tawheed does not stop. Right? There's no... Tawheed is always at the forefront of the heart of the muwahhid in every single situation, that he is in. And that's why we see in the same surah, what do we see? قُلْ هَذِهِ سَبِيلِي أَدْعُو إِلَى اللَّهِ عَلَى بَصِيرَةٍ أَنَا وَمَنِ اتَّبَعَنِي وَسُبْحَانَ اللَّهِ وَمَا أَنَا مِنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ. This ayah that we use as the manhaj, as the methodology of da'wah, قُلْ هَذِهِ سَبِيلِي أَدْعُو إِلَى اللَّهِ عَلَى بَصِيرَةٍ. This is in the same surah as we see, what we see from Yusuf alayhi salam and his da'wah and his way and his manhaj in calling these people. So this is another scenario, a third scenario that we wanted to mention regarding Yusuf alayhi salam. A fourth scenario, a very quick brief summary, is the Ashab al-Kahf, is the people of the cave in Surah al-Kahf, the youths that you know. I'll quickly summarize the whole story without going into too much detail. Is that these youths, they were people of Tawheed, and they saw that their people, their nation, were committing shirk, and they were worshipping idols, and they abandoned that, and they stood against that, and they sought refuge. They wanted refuge from this environment, from their Lord, and so they then sought refuge. They actually stated, فَقَالُوا رَبُّنَا رَبُّ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ لَن نَدْعُوَ مِن دُونِهِ إِلَهًا. They said to the people, our Lord is the Lord of the heavens and the earth. We shall never invoke anyone besides him. And لَقَدْ قُلْنَا إِذًا شَطَطًا. If we did so, we would say a truly evil, a lie and a truly evil thing. And that these people, our people, they took other gods besides Allah. So they sought refuge in the cave, and then obviously we know the rest of the story, that Allah put them to sleep for 300 years or 309 years and saved them from their people, and then He brought them back to make them awake again. And so in that story as well, we see, what do we see? We see youths who see what they see in their society of polytheism and idolatry. And for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in order to preserve themselves, to save their religion, and to safeguard their religion, then they sought refuge with Allah and they went to a cave. And so Allah made them an ayah, made them a miracle, made them a sign, and He put them to sleep and He saved them and He delivered them from their own people. Right? So there's more to the story, but again, for the shortage of time, we'll just mention that very briefly by way of another example. Right? So we have the people in the cave, fleeing from idolatry, fleeing from shirk. Another example that can be given is the hijrah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam along with Abu Bakr, hiding in the cave. Hiding in the cave. So we see in the ayah in Surah At-Tawbah, إِلَّا تَنْصُرُوهُ فَقَدْ نَصَرَهُ اللَّهُ إِذْ أَخْرَجَهُ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا ثَانِيَ اثْنَيْنِ إِذْ هُمَا فِي الْغَارِ. Unless you aid him, meaning the messenger, for indeed Allah aided him when the people of disbelief, when they expelled him. And there was the second of the two when they were in the cave. إِذْ يَقُولُ لِصَاحِبِهِ, when he, meaning the messenger, said to his companion, who is Abu Bakr, لَا تَحْزَنْ إِنَّ اللَّهَ مَعَنَا, do not grieve, do not be sad, indeed Allah is with us. فَأَنزَلَ اللَّهُ سَكِينَتَهُ عَلَيْهِ وَأَيَّدَهُ بِجُنُودٍ لَمْ تَرَوْهَا. So Allah sent down His tranquility upon him, meaning Abu Bakr, and aided him with hosts that you did not see, meaning angels. وَجَعَلَ كَلِمَةَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا السُّفْلَى وَكَلِمَةُ اللَّهِ هِيَ الْعُلْيَا وَاللَّهُ عَزِيزٌ حَكِيمٌ. And He made the word of the people of disbelief to be lowest, and the word of Allah to be uppermost, and indeed Allah is mighty and all-wise. So what do we see in this example? What do we take from this example? Again, summarizing from Imam al-Sa'di rahimahullah ta'ala, is that we see in this situation Abu Bakr radiyallahu anhu, he felt some grief or some fear, and that was because he feared for the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, not out of weakness, he feared for the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And in this state and condition, what did the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he is the Messenger of Allah, he said, "La tahzan, inna Allah ma'ana." So he mentioned the ma'iyah of Allah, that Allah is with us. He's with us with His aid, with His support, with His strengthening. فَأَنزَلَ اللَّهُ سَكِينَتَهُ عَلَيْهِ. And then upon the heart of Abu Bakr, the sakina was sent down to make the heart of Abu Bakr to be firm. And As-Sa'di rahimahullah, he says that the aid of Allah, of His Messenger, or the aid of Allah is of two types. The first one is when the Muslims are pursuing and seeking an enemy. And so Allah gives them and aids them and supports them. This is one way. And the second way is when the enemy is pursuing the Muslim or the believer, as we see in this case, where the kuffar of the Quraysh, they chased Abu Bakr and the Messenger in pursuit of them, and they surrounded them, and they were about to catch them, and then they went into the cave, and then Allah did what He did, to protect them and save them. So this is the second way that Allah aids the believers, which is the mustad'af, the one who is weak, the one who's being pursued. In that scenario, likewise, when the believers are the ones who are in pursuit, right? If they are people of Tawheed, if they single out Allah Azza wa Jal. And so from the benefits that As-Sa'di rahimahullah, he mentions from this whole situation, again there is more to discuss, but from the points he extracts is to show the benefit of as-sakina, the fadl of what as-sakina, to be tranquil, to be calm, to be at ease, right, to have certainty. This is the way of the heart of a believer, of a muwahhid. He's not agitated by, he's not made weak by way of, these things. As he says, وَفِيهَا فَضِيلَةُ السَّكِينَةِ وَأَنَّهَا مِن تَمَامِ نِعْمَةِ اللَّهِ عَلَى الْعَبْدِ فِي أَوْقَاتِ الشَّدَائِدِ وَالْمَخَاوِفِ الَّتِي تَطِيشُ بِهَا الْأَفْئِدَةِ. This is hardships, calamities, is when you lose you lose your mind basically. You can't think straight, and your heart becomes agitated, and you can't. In these times, this is when sakina is needed, and sakina is in accordance with the knowledge of the servant of his Lord. The more knowledgeable you are of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, His names, His attributes, His promises, and how He aided His messengers, and more conviction you have, then the greater will be your sakina in times of calamities and difficulties. And we see that Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah, as a benefit, he mentions as-sakina in al-Madarij, and he mentions how Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, that whenever affairs would become difficult for him, he would recite and ask to be recited the ayat in the Quran that mention sakina, that mention tranquility. There are 6 or 7 verses in the Quran. One of them is this ayah in Surah At-Tawbah, فَأَنزَلَ اللَّهُ سَكِينَتَهُ عَلَيْهِ. The other one at the beginning of Surah Al-Fath, the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, هُوَ الَّذِي أَنزَلَ السَّكِينَةَ فِي قُلُوبِ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ لِيَزْدَادُوا إِيمَانًا مَعَ إِيمَانِهِمْ. He is the one who sent down tranquility upon the hearts of the believers to increase their iman on top of their iman. And there are other ayat as well. So he says, وَسَمِعْتُهُ يَقُولُ, or he said, وَكَانَ شَيْخُ الْإِسْلَامِ ابْنُ تَيْمِيَّةَ رَحِمَهُ اللَّهِ إِذَا اشْتَدَّتْ عَلَيْهِ الْأُمُورُ قَرَأَ آيَاتِ السَّكِينَةِ. He would start reciting the verses of as-sakina whenever things would be difficult upon him. And he says, وَسَمِعْتُهُ يَقُولُ فِي وَاقِعَةٍ عَظِيمَةٍ جَرَتْ لَهُ فِي مَرَضِهِ. And I saw something amazing, mighty, which happened to him while he was ill. And the intellects are unable to really comprehend this thing. He said that in his illness, he was min muharabati arwahi shaytaniyya. Right? There were devil-like spirits that came to him and were fighting against him in the condition of his illness. Right? So when you are ill, as Ibn al-Qayyim says, ظَهَرَتْ لَهُ إِذْ ذَاكَ فِي حَالِ ضَعْفِ الْقُوَّةِ. When you are ill, your body is naturally weak. Right? It's weak. And in that state of weakness, it is possible for the shayateen and these evil spirits and the shayateen, for them to come and put a man to trial. And he said that this is something that actually happened with Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah. And he said, قال فلما اشتد علي الأمر قلت لأقاربي ومن حولي اقرأوا آيات السكينة. So Ibn Taymiyyah said, he's describing what happened to him. So when this affair became very heavy and severe upon me, I said to my relatives and whoever was around me, read the verses of as-sakina. قال ثم قلع عني عن ذلك الحال وجلست وما بي قلبه. So then that situation then stopped, and I sat up, and there was nothing, like that. And then Ibn al-Qayyim says also, this has happened to me as well. I have read these ayat whenever my heart became disturbed, when there was ittirab in my heart. And so I saw that it had a mighty effect upon the heart. So as-sakina is tum'anina Al-waqar, it is to be tranquil, to be calm, and it is something that Allah puts in the heart of His servant when his heart is agitated with fear or with grief or something, so that the heart now becomes stable and it increases in iman and it increases in certainty. This is what happened to Abu Bakr radiyallahu anhu when the Messenger of Allah reminded him about an affair of Tawheed, which is the ma'iyah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah's aid is with us, Allah's support is with us. And so he gave sakina came down to the heart of Abu Bakr radiyallahu anhu. And then there are in fact multiple situations in the Quran where this sakina descended. For example, Ibn al-Qayyim mentions 3. The day of the hijrah, right? So this is this example of Abu Bakr with the Messenger of Allah in the cave. So Allah sent down sakina to the heart of Abu Bakr. The second example is the day of Hunayn, the battle of Hunayn, when the Muslims, they suffered a loss and a defeat, and they turned on their backs and they fled, and they were confused, and everyone was just thinking about himself. Their hearts were in disarray. So then from His mercy, Allah Azza wa Jal sent down the sakina upon the hearts of the believers to calm them, to make them tranquil. That's the second example in the Quran. And the third example is the day of Hudaybiyah, like we just mentioned at the beginning of Surah Al-Fath. Because when the Messenger he made the treaty with the Mushrikeen, then many of the companions, they were disturbed. They had a disturbance in their hearts, because they were thinking, how can we allow the disbelievers to have this tahakkum, to preside over us and come under their conditions, until even Umar bin al-Khattab, he was affected by this. And he is who he is, Umar bin al-Khattab, as Ibn al-Qayyim says. And he said, وحسبك بضعف عمر رضي الله عنه عن حملها وهو عمر حتى ثبته الله بالصديق رضي الله عنه. Even Umar, and he is who he is, he was unable to bear this issue of the treaty, and until Abu Bakr radiyallahu anhu was gave him, settled him and calmed him. So this now is yet another example. This is another example of how Tawheed, when the heart is disturbed, when the heart has grief, when the heart is agitated, it is Tawheed that brings sakina, tranquility to the heart of the believer, no matter what that situation might be. There are 3 situations here. The example of Ibn Taymiyyah, when he's ill, when you are ill, when you are angry, when you are upset, whatever the situation might be, in Tawheed is an escape, is a refuge, is a relief, is removal of the calamity. The next example is an example that we mentioned before, is the example in the time of Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah on the approach of the Tartars, the Mongols, when they came from the east. And this is in his book Al-Istighatha or Al-Radd al-Bakri. And he mentions in there, basically, I'll again summarize for want of time. Basically, he's mentioning here how he used to debate and argue with some of these Sufi sheikhs. These Sufi sheikhs, they were put to trial by way of grave worship and invoking the saints and things like this. So we'd have these discussions with the Sufis about the reality of what the messengers came with, and how that the people are only punished after iqamatul hujjah. So he explained to these Sufis, look, all of this comes down to establishing the proof. And we do not make takfir of anyone, even if someone is falling into shirk, except until establishing the hujjah. This is our way. And he went on to explain that this man, this sheikh and people like him, this is what they were involved in. They were involved in calling the dead, asking them, seeking refuge in them, to fulfill their needs and so on and so forth. And then he says, then when an external enemy came towards Damascus, which is Syria, and the Muslims ran in fear, they ran to the graves. خرجوا يستغيثون بالموتى عند القبور. They began to seek rescue from the graves, and they even used to recite poetry. يا خائفين من التتر لوذوا بقبر أبي عمر. He would say, oh, those who are fearful of the Tartars, go and seek refuge with the grave of Abu Umar. Right? So they would say this out loudly. And he mentioned some other poetry as well. عوذوا بقبر أبي عمر ينجيكم من الضرر. Seek refuge in the grave of Abu Umar, and it will save you from the harm. So Ibn Taymiyyah said, so I said to these people, I said to them, these people you are going to and you are seeking their aid and their rescue, if these same people were present with you and fought with you, you would be defeated, just like the Muslims were defeated on the day of Uhud. You'd all be defeated, meaning the very people you are invoking besides Allah, even if they were with you and fought with you and for you against the advancing enemy, you would be defeated just like the Muslims were defeated on the day of Uhud. And he said, this is because there are certain reasons on account of which an army is defeated. And it is because of the wisdom of Allah why this is so. And then he said that a difference occurred between the people of knowledge. There were some from the people of knowledge, وَلِهَذَا كَانَ أَهْلُ الْمَعْرِفَةِ بِالدِّينِ وَالْمُكَاشَفَةِ لَمْ يُقَاتِلُوا فِي تِلْكَ الْمَرَّةِ لِعَدْمِ الْقِتَالِ الشَّرْعِ الَّذِي أَمَرَ اللَّهُ بِهِ وَرَسُولُهُ. He said, some of the people of knowledge and insight, they decided not to fight against the Tartars, because it was not a legislated fighting which Allah and His Messenger commands, and because there would be much more evil and much more corruption that would result if they actually engage in the fighting, and the anticipated help from Allah would not be realized. So therefore there would be no reward in that, in this life, nor in the hereafter for the one who did that. So meaning, this is a group of the people of knowledge looking at the situation and saying, you know what, this is not the time to engage in fighting now, because of reasons, right? Because this doesn't fulfill the conditions, and we will not receive the aid of Allah. So they decided not to do so. However, there was many others from the people of knowledge who held that it was a legislated fight, to fight against the Tartars. However, Ibn Taymiyyah says, "Ujiru ala niyatihim." These are rewarded for their intention, meaning he considered them to be wrong. You were wrong, right? In your estimation of evaluation of the situation, you are wrong. Then he said, فلما كان بعد ذلك جعلنا نأمر الناس بإخلاص الدين لله عز وجل والاستغاثة به وأنهم لا يستغيثون إلا إياه. So we then began to teach the people. We began to command the people with ikhlas to Allah and to seek rescue only from Him, that they should not seek rescue from anyone besides Him, and neither from an angel nor from a prophet, just like Allah said regarding the battle of Badr, إِذْ تَسْتَغِيثُونَ رَبَّكُمْ فَاسْتَجَابَ لَكُمْ. Right, on the battle of Badr, the believers sought rescue from their Lord, and He gave them rescue. So basically they spent time teaching the people to abandon the shirk and to turn to Allah and to make istighatha to Him. He said, فَلَمَّا أَصْلَحَ النَّاسُ أُمُورَهُمْ. When the people then rectified their affairs, وَصَدَقُوا فِي الْإِسْتِغَاثَةِ بِرَبِّهِمْ, and they were then truthful in seeking rescue from their Lord, نَصَرَهُمْ عَلَىٰ عَدُوِّهِمْ نَصْرًا عَزِيزًا. He then aided them against their enemy with a tremendous, mighty aid. And the Tartars did not suffer a defeat with the likes of this defeat before that. لما صح من تحقيق توحيد الله تعالى وطاعة رسوله. Why? Because of the actualization of the Tawheed of Allah and obedience to His Messenger. And so they were given such victory that never happened before that. For indeed Allah, فإن الله تعالى ينصر رسوله والذين آمنوا في الحياة الدنيا ويوم يقوم الأشهاد. For indeed Allah will aid His Messenger and those who believe in the life of this world, and when the witnesses are established. So this is now another example, right? This is another scenario. What's the scenario? There is an invading army coming, huge in numbers, fierce, ruthless, brutal. And what do we see the state of the Muslims? They're running to the grave, running to the tomb, seeking istighatha from other than Allah. This is what you see today in the Muslim lands. Most of the Muslim lands, with the exception of certain regions like in the Gulf countries, you have actual tombs, you have actual graves, you have people seeking refuge, seeking rescue, seeking cure from illness, seeking provision of children, and going to these graves and traveling. When a calamity befalls, they unlike the first Mushriks, who would single out Allah, invoke Him alone, these people do the opposite. They run to their saints and the people that they worship. How then can you expect and anticipate victory against the enemy when this is the sad, pitiful state? And so that's why Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah and the people of knowledge with him, they were of the view that this is not the time, this is not the legislated, shar'i qital. It will bring more harm, it will bring more evil. So they spent much time in rectifying the people's hearts. And you see the tremendous victory that Ibn Taymiyyah mentioned that they were given, that they had never ever had before that time. Why? Because of the tahqiq of Tawheed. Right? So once again, the same thing, the people of Tawheed, it doesn't matter what situation you are in. In every situation in your life, whether it is like the examples that we mentioned, Tawheed is always at the forefront of everything. So we come to the end now. These were examples. Many others could be given to illustrate the importance of Tawheed in removing calamities and defeat of enemies. And the asl of all of that returns back to what? Two things. Al-Ikhlas was Sidq. What we mentioned in the first lesson. Ikhlas is sincerity to Allah. And as-Sidq, truthfulness, as we established yesterday, truthfulness is the foundation of every other good quality in the heart. And I want to finish the lesson by emphasizing this issue of as-Sidq. And it explains, from Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, Shaykh al-Islam explains how as-Sidq, being truthful, is the foundation of every good deed, and how lying is the foundation of every evil deed. And he gives 8 reasons or 8 proofs for this, and they are very interesting and they're very useful. So he says, as-Sidq asasul hasanat wa jima'uha. Truthfulness is the foundation of all goodness and brings it all together. From 8 reasons. Number 1, and I'll summarize this very briefly. He says the first reason is that man is a speaking being, living speaking being, hayyun natiq. And he is characterized by speech. This is unlike the animal. The animal is unlike this, right? The animal cannot make khabar, right? Man makes khabar because he is speaking. And this is what distinguishes between a man and an animal. Now, if a man was to tell lies, if he tells lies, then he has removed what is the foundation of being a man, of insaniyya, which is that is hayyun natiq, right? Meaning that he tells lies, and he is worse than an animal, which doesn't have the ability to speak and which obviously does not tell lies, right? He cannot converse. So this is the asl. So he says, this is the asl of insaniyya and muru'ah. And so when a person removes as-sidq, then he's removed the asl of insaniyya and muru'ah from himself. And then he mentions a statement that is narrated from some of the Sahaba and some of the scholars. He says, La muru'ah likadhub. There is no manhood for the one who tells lies. Wala rahata lihasud. Just like there is no tranquility for the one who is jealous. The one who is envious, his heart cannot be tranquil because he's always seeing other people. I wish I had this, I wish I had that. He cannot have any tranquility. وَلَا إِخَاءَ لِمَلُوكٍ, which means that there can be no brotherhood for the one who is a seeker of power and authority. Right? The ones who's seeking power, he will not, he doesn't keep friends. وَلَا سُؤْدُدْ لِبَخِيلٍ, and the one who is stingy can never have any kind of sufficiency. Right? So here, the one who is a liar can never ever be, like a man. Manhood. The second thing is, what is the thing that distinguishes a prophet from a false prophet? What is it? As-sidq. How do we know a truthful prophet from a false prophet? It is as-sidq. So we have the Nabi and we have the Mutanabbi. Right? So sidq is what distinguishes the true prophets from false prophets. فَمَنْ أَظْلَمُ مِمَّنْ كَذَبَ عَلَى اللَّهِ وَكَذَّبَ بِالصِّدْقِ إِذَا جَاءَهُ. Right? Who is more unjust than the one who lies upon Allah and rejects as-sidq when it comes to him? The third is as-sidq distinguishes between the mu'min and the munafiq. What's the difference between the believer and the hypocrite? What is it? Sidq. Inside the heart, there's no sidq. Right? So the hypocrite is a liar inwardly. So he then goes on to say that the asas of nifaq, the foundation of nifaq, is al-kadhib. And then he mentions the hadith of hypocrisy, the traits of hypocrisy. But this is the third thing, that sidq is what distinguishes between nifaq and iman. The fourth is that as-sidq is the asal of all of birr. Everything which is birr, which is righteousness, being truthful, as-sidq is the foundation of all of that. And as you know the hadith, alaykum bis-sidq, فَإِنَّ الصِّدْقَ يَهْدِي إِلَى الْبِرِّ وَإِنَّ الْبِرَّ يَهْدِي إِلَى الْجَنَّةِ. Right, so the hadith, upon you is to be truthful, for indeed truthfulness guides to birr, righteousness, and indeed righteousness guides to paradise. And a man never ceases being truthful until he is written with Allah as a siddiq. And beware of lying, for indeed lying leads to fujur, and fujur leads to hellfire, and a man continues to lie until he's written with Allah as a kadhab, as a liar. Right, so that's the fourth. It is the asl of birr. Fifthly, the one who is truthful, the sadiq, the angels descend upon him. The angels descend upon the truthful person. Whereas the one who is a liar, what descends upon him? The shayateen. So the truthful person, the angels descend upon him. The person who is a liar, then it is the shayateen that descend upon him. The proof in the Quran, هَلْ أُنَبِّئُكُمْ عَلَى مَنْ تَنَزَّلَ الشَّيَاطِينَ تَنَزَّلُوا عَلَى كُلِّ أَفَّاكٍ أَثِيمٍ. Shall I not inform you upon whom the devils descend? They descend upon every sinful liar. The sixth reason, what distinguishes between that sidq, is the al-fariq بين الصديقين والشهداء والصالحين, from those who resemble them. Right? So there are the truthful siddiqeen, there are the martyrs, there are the righteous. What characterizes them? It is they are truthful. As opposed to whom? Al-mura'in wal-musmi'in, those who show off, those who fall into riyah, those who want to be heard, they want a reputation, they want a name. Wal-mubilisin, right? And those who basically confuse and mix. Right? So what distinguishes between these two? It is as-sidq and al-kadhib. One group is truthful, the siddiqeen, the shuhada, the salihin, and the other group, they are not truthful in what they are doing. Their actions are not sincere. Right? So that's the distinguishing between the righteous and the ones who seek other than that. That's the sixth reason. The seventh is that truthfulness is actually the foundation of the shahada, right? Of the testimony or the certification, right? The whole world, everything operates upon sidq, right? So for example, it has to be the quality of the rulers. The ruler who as al-hukm, al-qada, right? There has to be truthfulness. right? And likewise, the mufti who gives the fatwa to the Muslimin, as-sidq has to be the rukn, has to be the pillar, because why? He's informing the people of the rulings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Likewise, it has to be, truthfulness has to be the behavior of a man with himself, to be truthful to oneself. And likewise, وَرُكْنُ الْمُعَامَلَاتِ, right? The dealings and interactions that we have between each other, all of that, the rukn has to be truthfulness, that when we exchange goods and we all have to be truthful in what we are saying. And likewise, the ru'ya, the dream that a person sees, right? He says, those who are most truthful in the ru'ya, meaning those who see the most truest dreams, are the ones who are the most truthful in their speech. Right? وَالرُّكْنُ الرُّؤْيَا الَّتِي قِيلَ فِيهَا أَصْدَقُهُمْ رُؤْيًا أَصْدَقُهُمْ كَلَامًا. Right? The most truthful in the dreams that they see are the ones who are the most truthful in their interactions, in their speech, and so on and so forth. So meaning here that sidq is the asas of everything. A sidq has to be in a ruler, has to be in a scholar, has to be in a mufti, has to be in a man with his family, has to be in trade dealings, has to be with interactions. Otherwise is corruption, right? So sidq is the asas of everything. And finally, he said, أن المشايخ العارفين اتفقوا على أن أساس الطريق إلى الله هو الصدق والإخلاص. That all the mashayikh, the learned scholars, are agreed that the foundation of the path to Allah, and this really summarizes the essence of what we are discussing in these lessons, that the foundation of the path to Allah huwa sidq wal ikhlas. It is truthfulness and sincerity to Allah, كما جمع الله بينهما في قوله, and Allah combined these two together in this when He said, واجتنبوا قول الزور حنفاء لله غير مشركين به. Right? Avoid false statement. Right? So this is sidq. And be upright to Allah, not committing shirk with Him. This is ikhlas. So as-sidq and ikhlas have been combined in these two verses. And then he mentions other ayat that in the Quran, the sidq has been commanded. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu attaqullah wa kunu ma'as sadiqin. O you who believe, fear Allah and be with those who are truthful. So coming to an end and closing everything, what we've mentioned here today and in yesterday's lesson is to really explain the role of Tawheed in removing calamities and defeating the enemies. We gave many examples from the prophets and the messengers, from history, from many different scenarios and situations of hardships, trials, calamities, from Hud alayhi salam, from Yusuf alayhi salam in terms of da'wah, Hud alayhi salam in terms of standing up to a powerful nation, the Tartars, and you know, when not should there be legislated fighting. You look at the state of the people. Are they upon Tawheed? Are they invoking Allah? Are they? All of these things, we see Tawheed in everything. And as we said before, this is the way of the people of Tawheed who follow the manhaj of the Anbiya, and they put aside their emotions, they put aside their feelings, and they evaluate everything on the basis of this Tawheed. And that's why they see things clearly. That's why the ulama of Tawheed, they are correct. They are correct in their evaluation of the affairs. And so with that note, inshallah, we will conclude. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in.